Hello, family and friends. Welcome to another Talks with Lim Lee. This is available to the billions of people around the world on YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Podchaser, and so many more. I'm your host, Lim. I bring the perspective of a software engineer doing it for about 2 decades, almost 2 decades. And my sidekick is...
Emmett Morgan, some dude in Las Vegas. Oh, well, I do a lot of real estate stuff now. I know a lot about accounting. And yeah, I feel I should pump myself up some more.
Is it because of my hello, family and friends?
As far as my credibility, I'm just a guy in Vegas. We are lucky today.
Well, I mean, sorry, you do it so. I mean, we get to do this intro so much, so sometimes you could have a killer one, and then you could just throw in like a dud one if you want.
Yeah, I'm wearing makeup under my eyes right now to cover the dark circles. That's who I am today. I'm a guy wearing concealer. Let me know how it looks. Today we've got Alec on. Welcome to the Talks with Lim Lee podcast. How would you describe yourself? You're an interesting dude. What can you tell us about Alec?
I'm pretty basic. I'm a student still.
No, you're not. The story that you gave earlier, you're not basic.
No, we're at the beginning of the podcast.
Creeping up on 30, still a student. One day I'll get a real job. But I'm a PhD student, and I founded a biotech company. And I just want to say that, if nothing else, you're both very handsome. So
thank you, man. Oh, man. We haven't had that yet. I don't know how we continue this podcast. I don't know how to continue that. Now, plug yourself.
I wrote the book, Seeing Inside, that is available on Amazon and Gumroad.
You sell yourself short, man. You're the first guy I've ever met that co-founded a biotech company, so that's pretty awesome.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so we talk about your biotech company. We talk about your upbringing, your childhood, raised in poverty and abuse, overcoming that, and then doing all the amazing things that you've done for the company. You got your PhD in
he's mid PhD. Is that correct?
Mid-PhD.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're about a year and a half out, and you're 28 years old with all that and a book. Is there anything else I missed?
He loves people.
And that too. So stay tuned for that talk, everyone.
Dun, dun, dun.
Cut. Alec, you're a PhD with, what's the focus on?
We do molecular genetics, and I work with like oxidative stress and how that affects cells.
Molecular genetics and how oxidative stress affects cells?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like the very, very, very nitty gritty on cells, getting into the DNA and the shape of proteins, like most basic biochemical stuff. The boring stuff really is what I look at. I don't get to look at anything interesting and human-centric.
No, this is interesting so far.
To me, that sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
I actually tried to YouTube some stuff. You sent me some material, so I searched protein folding a little bit. You did some alternative protein, like burgers and whatnot. And then, man, I think there's one other one. But
dude, I could talk about burgers all day.
I love it. I got to get into the meat stuff later.
Well, okay, let's start with your favorite topic then. What can you like talk forever about? What do you just love?
Is it Dr. Alec? Do we call you doctor?
Oh.
No, I wish, man. It's still about a year and a half away from that. Just Captain Alec will do for now.
Okay, Captain Alec, the burger captain.
Yeah, well, right now with the company, what we do is, well, in a nutshell, what we do with the biotech, and we inherently just make any cell in a culture grow better. Because anytime you want to grow a cell, you have to put it basically into a big soup of nutrients so that it has everything it needs around it so that it can double and it can differentiate and make different kinds of cells. But right now, what we're really focusing on, because there's different markets for that, is alternative meat stuff. So I don't know if you've seen, a lot of these companies are coming out with burgers, but you don't have to necessarily kill a cow for it. You could just take a biopsy of the cow muscle, put that biopsy in a nutrient soup and let it double, and then you get a burger, at the end of it. So that's really what we're focusing on now, and that is like a major ethical impact point for me. That's like half the reason that we're in that market right now.
So essentially, can you can you grow a brick of meat instead of growing a whole cow? Because really, we just want to eat. Meat is the muscle tissue. So if we're eating part of a cow, we're eating the muscle parts, right? Is that a correct way to think about it?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, what it is you're just taking whatever, whether it's whatever cut of meat you want, and you're letting it double. It gets a little more complex because you also have to add things like structural complexity and different tissue types because you want some fat in there because fat's where all the flavor comes in.
Yeah.
So you take all these different cells and kind of add them together and kind of build the structure of a steak or a hamburger or whatever other cut you want. But essentially, yeah, you can grow whatever you like in different flasks, add them together, and essentially get whatever you would see in a commercial setting.
Okay, so in a like a flask, like you say, you could say grab. So for example, let's say a piece of filet mignon, which is my favorite cut, right? The tenderloin. If you can grab a cell and grow tenderloin, essentially, that's a muscle tissue. Can you also grow fat separately? Okay.
Yeah, you can grow them separately. You can grow them in the same tank. The stuff they're doing, man. So when they actually go to making the construct, so once they've got their cell grows, they've got a big ball of cells. They have these wild ways that they'll get them in the right form.
Yeah.
So sometimes they'll just make these sheets, these flat sheets, and they'll just stack them on top of each other. Sometimes they'll use electricity to align all the cells end to end so that they kind of stick together. But yeah, you can do filet mignon. They're doing lobster. They're doing salmon, chicken, all kinds of stuff. And, you can get into anything. It may turn out that buffalo is way tastier than cow, and now we can just grow buffalo in flasks.
Oh, yeah. So could conceivably in the future, could you have kind of, I guess, an assembly line where you're growing, I don't know, a mile worth of meat, right? A mile worth of lobster meat. I mean, it's so strange because we think of food as, eating animals in this context. But if you could grow a mile of lobster meat, I mean, that sounds delicious, kind of. I mean, if I don't have to peel the shell and...
It's never ending, just air fell straight into your face.
Yes.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, it'll come in these giant vats, like these enormous vats. So you'll end up with more of a hunk than a line.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty much you can just, if we somehow got T-Rex cells that were viable and double, grown T-Rex in the future. Right now.
What'd you have for dinner? Some Tyrannosaurus meat?
No, just a little stegosaurus with a side of butter. Delicious.
I don't know if you're old enough. Did you ever see the Flintstones cartoons?
Yeah, when I was very young. That's right on the cusp on that.
So I'm imagining eating dinosaur-sized portions of meat.
Yeah, those stegosaurus that are bigger than your car.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess essentially we're on the beginning stages of growing meat. What are the challenges right now that exist in the industry? Is it a matter of bringing the cost down or growing enough of it to have some worthy supply? Because if you grow one steak, that's awesome, but that doesn't change anything in the world, right? So you almost need to grow a lot of it to make any difference, especially in America where we're lucky and indulgent in eating so much meat. I almost seldom have a meal without meat in it. It's a strange thing in the world to have this much meat around, right?
Right. Yeah, the scaling is definitely going to be the issue. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with KPMG or McKinsey or any of these massive consulting firms, but they put out these conceptual papers, these trend papers. And one of the major ones recently was talking about this bio revolution that we're in. Yeah. So now we're looking towards biology as much as computing for things like storage or production of medicines and stuff. But a lot of it is going to be taking some very massive industries and turning them more biological. So like food production and energy production, because you can do things like biodiesels from algae. But on the food side, the major problem right now is commercial scale. So there was a headline a couple of years ago that was talking about like a $10,000 hamburger because the technology was just so new that the resources that it took to put the hamburger made the end product super expensive. But now we're on the cusp of commercial parity where you can get a hamburger at just a little bit more, maybe like a 20% premium than your normal grown chuck. But to scale it to a commercial level where you can geographically supply it to everybody, you got to have a lot of people with a lot of tanks. And so eventually we're going to get there, and money is pouring into it right now. But I'd say in the next 5 years or so, you're going to be seeing it on local shelves.
I didn't know we were that close now. So you're saying, for 20% more than the cost of your average, let's say burger, right? So burger is ground beef generally. You can create lab grown beef that you apples to apples, beef to beef. You cost 20% more, but otherwise you're buying the same pound of ground beef, right? That's
the projection. So I'm not sure exactly the cost parity right now, but I think that's about the end stage of where they want to get it, because it'll be a little bit of a premium product, 15 to 20%. But it's not going to be $10,000 a burger anymore.
Yeah, I could see people paying double. Yeah, for a very ethical, because there's a lot of people that have gone vegan and vegetarian just purely on seeing documentaries that seem to torture animals. So they're like, I don't want to torture animals, so I would, they do things like eating tofu all day. And
yeah, the last time I bought like the Impossible Burger, I think that was about a $25 burger, but it was at a fancy casino too, so there was a markup for the casino. And then I don't know if certain joints like Burger King or something, I've heard certain burger joints are carrying the burgers.
The Impossible Whopper.
Yeah. I don't know the prices on that. So have you by chance gone to a Burger King and seen if it's a 20% difference? That'd be pretty cool.
I haven't, but I eat a lot of Impossible meat, and I think I get a pound of it for like $7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so not bad.
But is that different in that, is that vegetable based as opposed to protein based?
That one is going to be vegetable based, and then they use this protein called leg hemoglobin to get that bloody kind of flavor. It's an iron based protein, so it gives you that same sort of flavoring, but it comes from yeast.
Okay. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I think as when you emailed me, and then I started doing the research, even because when you emailed me probably about, was it 2 weeks ago? I tried to do some research on this topic too. And then now all of a sudden my Google News feed this morning was showing me the cost of burgers are coming down astronomically, where it's going to be viable. I didn't get to, I was trying to actually, I swiped down from the article and I was like, no, go back. And then I couldn't find it. Did you happen to see any very recent news on that? Like, if I was curious on what that article was, but I didn't get to find it.
I don't remember what country it is. It may be like Thailand or Indonesia, but their government is pushing for it heavily, to the point where a company called Just Foods actually just released the first chicken product. So you can go over there, and in certain restaurants you can buy the chicken that they're producing in labs.
Yeah.
So in the world right now, you can go and get somebody cooking you and bringing you a dish that's produced that way. So now I think a lot of it is going to be incentivizing and educating the population, and also the economics of it. But if they were to do something where, because I don't think it falls too much on the once you can wrap your brain around the fact that the cells come from an animal and they're just doubling, the same way that if you were to take a pruning branch of a tree and plant it, you get another tree. It's the same kind of thing. And I think that if they were to incentivize it in ways where they said like, hey, if you were making green purchases, we can give you a tax write-off, and then it makes more economical sense, I think a lot more people are going to be on board, and it'll kind of sweep once it starts being more economically feasible.
Did you come across, are you passionate about this project or this topic because it's from your line of work and or your degree, it kind of went there, or how did you, where does it cross paths for you?
How did you end up here?
Not like that.
I don't even kill bugs. Like, well, okay, I'll kill a mosquito.
That's tough.
But any
in
other
Houston,
bugs,
yeah.
spiders and stuff, I'll take it outside. So I'm a huge animal lover. And we started off with the company actually wanting to do things like insulin production, to make impact and also make some pretty solid money. But then this market opened up, and it's a great market economically, because it's like, they're at this optimization stage right now where they need solutions. And if we can be a solution, then we can hedge out a pretty big space for ourselves. So it was a pretty good choice there. But also, like, it just kind of helps me sleep better at night. I'm a big old softy about animals. So
I could tell you this, if you can, so much of our, so in Vegas, we have a lot of popular fast food chains, and it's all essentially deep fried chicken. So, KFC is the old school one, but also the Popeyes is really a popular sandwich. Cane's is a huge drive-through super popular here. Chick-fil-A. And then you start going down the line. All these drive-through and fast food joints are basically deep fried chicken in one way, shape, form, or another. So, if you can simulate or you can make a parity for deep fried chicken, that would be fantastic, because people are just wolfing that down despite all the health implications and risk of, the negative impact of eating so much deep fried chicken is
taste champions all. And especially at that point, if you're just deep frying it, it doesn't even need to look good. You can get salt, like,
yeah. So really, I mean, does it just I'm imagining that's a big part of the challenge is when you bite into it, it can't feel like tofu, right? Because tofu is kind of a foamy, squishy. So you need that meaty thing that you're biting into. Is that one of the big challenges in that industry, or is that done easy, figured it out?
That is the struggle. So there was a company, I think it's Memphis Meats, but they just recently became Upside Foods, that branding. But they released a steak. I think it was them. It might have been somebody else. I don't want to disparage their name if it wasn't them. But it did not look good. It was gray and lumpy, and it looked like when you see a cartoon and it's like mystery meat in the cafeteria, just like that. So it's a big challenge, and they have to do things like put aromatics in there so that you can get the same sort of sizzling smell, and the fat content has to be right, and it has to be dependent on the animal that you want to recreate. So there's a lot of challenges still left, but they're not hard. It's just putting the work in, using the new technologies, figuring out the ratios of everything. So it's an eventuality, but it is a big problem right now.
Is there anything that you would say to someone if they had some type of conspiracy theory doubt on lab grown meat? Like if they're saying either
it's going to give me cancer,
that, or that the government's producing it because it's, I don't know what conspiracy theory they would have. Because I actually it's mostly, I hear people, they fear lab grown meat, and they don't want to even try it. They say something like, I like good old cow. Like, now if someone were to say that to you, what would be some of your counter arguments for that? Or how would you try to convince them otherwise?
I think that with a lot of conspiracy theories in general, or a lot of extreme beliefs, the real challenge is in education, and education only comes with like an explicit tone of understanding. So if you come at it with like an attack sense, they're just going to double down. So if somebody came to me and talked about that, I think that I would try to use a couple different analogies to explain how it's working. Like even when you get like a scab and then your skin heals over it and you have new skin, but it's the same exact skin, all that's happening is the skin that's there is just recreating itself to cover it over. Or the tree one. I like the tree one because, you take part of a tree and you plant it and you get a brand new tree from it, and you're essentially just recreating it. So you can create a forest from a single tree with enough time and resources. And you are never going to eliminate, people that want to eat animals. But if you can at least get enough people to do it and make it socially okay and not politicize it, because it's totally going to be politicized. Like it's super, super easy to draw a line there. If you can make it sort of a resourceful thing.
So we want to grow a forest of like apple trees, but instead of apples, they're meatballs.
Go meatball picking in the fall.
So I think that is weird for most people to conceptualize, and probably not the best way to grow meat. But I think what you're kind of hinting at is that people are okay. So Americans are, I don't know, we're not as scientifically educated as we could wish to be, and there are a lot of people that push back on things that they don't understand. I think what we're hinting at here in this, when you're saying it's politicized, something like maybe anti-vaccine thoughts. There are people, is there a high correlation between anti-vaxxers and well-educated, scientifically smart people? Probably, right? And then you see another thing in the supermarkets where people will pay more for an organic product, right? And you ask them, well, what makes it organic? And they couldn't tell you. You're like, there's no pesticides on it? Okay. Did it come from the same farm, or did somebody, is it different genes? Is it natural? Because it's not natural for apples to be this big, right? In the old days, apples were very tiny. So, when you see giant fruit, there's at the very least some selection process where a farmer is going, hey, you know what? I want the bigger avocados. I'm gonna try to grow the bigger avocado trees or something, right? So I think a total disconnection. We're here in the city and we walk into a supermarket and we don't know what happens out on the farms. We don't know what happens in the labs. So I think it's easier for people to get spooked, especially if they don't know a lot about science. And it's all kind of a mystery, right? It's all kind of a cloud of weird things to them. So I think it can be easy to get lost and go, you know what? I just want something I can trust, and I know I can trust cow meat because I know how that happens. Is that?
Yeah, I think that there is a huge fundamental failing in science communication and science education. And there's this weird notion where somebody gets too far along in science and they forget how to communicate. They forget how to be outside of the box looking in. And you see it in a lot of different areas. I mean, the vaccination one is one that's very common in the med center. So here in Houston, we have the largest med center in the world. But just last week, there was a huge demonstration of people who were rebelling against one of the hospitals that were requiring vaccinations for people, and actually kind of releasing and firing people who weren't vaccinated, even though they were nurses. And ideally, you would think of these people as fundamentally biologically educated people, but maybe have some weird sort of biases or, selective information confirmations. But, even in the community that you would expect to just be scientifically backing it, there are still a significant amount of people that, flow a different way.
Yeah, that one really. So we have friends that are nurses and doctors out here, and we hear that it's hard. Like, you can't get a hospital to get anywhere near 100% vaccination for COVID. So it's like, well, shoot, you would think this seems eminently reasonable. We have had vaccines forever. Hospitals are the places you go for medical care. You'd think everybody there would be on board to get a vaccine, especially because they're going to get exposed to everybody that comes in with COVID. Like, how could you? It's just baffling, and you go, well, what's the logic there? And how do we understand that when the staff at the hospital doesn't want a vaccine? I don't get it. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Alec, out of your circle of friends, by any chance, have you tried to mentally do a calculation on how many people are vaxxed and how many aren't?
It depends heavily on the group. So with my jiu-jitsu friends, there's a bigger proportion of people who are very anti-vaccination. But with my PhD friends, not a single one of them is anti-vax in any sense. So it's very cultural. It's very peer-based.
Yeah, so maybe that's a good point, is that people are choosing based on the people that they...
their circle.
Yeah.
But you would think, and to your analogy with the hospitals, you would think hospitals would have a higher rate instead of what I've been hearing, somewhere around a 50 to 60% rate. Correct me if I'm wrong, or if you guys heard differently. That sounds like a super low rate. Like, I work in IT, so I would imagine if someone mentioned password managers, I would think the engineers that I work with, all of them use password managers. Now, when I talk to other people that aren't IT people, they don't know about password managers, or they might have heard of it, but they don't use it. So that my analogy is, I would think in a hospital, like what you were saying, in a hospital you would think would be higher. So it's baffling to me also.
Yeah, I think it gets super, super personal in the sense, and forgive me if I'm taking too many steps back here, but I think a lot of it has to do with how people manage fear. So some people, when there's something new, like a new technology, and especially one that's dealing with an existential threat, you gather information so that you can make an assessment, and information is how you come to it, because the opposite of the mystery is the knowledge, right? So some people seek the information to understand it, and that's how they deal with their fear. And then other people tend to seek confirmation bias. So whatever crazy theories more so fit that either there's not a fear there, or the fear will not impact them, or they have a control in their life. Whatever theory gives them that control, that's what they'll double down on, and there's no way to change their mind from that.
Yeah.
So the two camps are the biggest ones.
No, that's a brilliant point, I think.
And then add on maybe that since we had smallpox or Spanish flu, that's what's more than a generation. So if we, I guess I'm trying to say people within one generation, say we got COVID now, people that are trying to think about things that they know. I'm trying to connect it to what you're saying, like what's new to them. To them, COVID is new. But if we look at history, we look at the history of smallpox, polio, Spanish flu, this stuff has been around. And there's plenty of scientists have been saying, hey, it's going to happen again. It's just a matter of time. It's not if, it's a matter of when. And so I think connected to you saying that it's beyond people's knowledge, or it's new to them, whether it be lab-grown meat. And in this case, we're also talking about the vaccination. It's sort of in one generation, we've only had so many big pandemic viruses.
Well, you're right. Like I know about smallpox, but it was eradicated a long time ago. So I'm 44. That's literally not a part of my experience. You know, I can read about it, I can study, but in my life, you know, from the day I hit kindergarten, that's not something that existed in my world. I didn't see people dying of it. I didn't see people getting jacked up by these old school diseases that are gone. So that's not a literal part of my world in front of my face. So maybe there are people that have trouble conceptualizing and seeing beyond their own experience.
Remember that car mechanic one time you picked me up from, and I left the conversation early, and as we walked out, I told you, yeah, that guy seems like this guy thinks the doomsday is coming, and this vaccination is a global meaning for the end of the earth is coming and stuff like that. And when he was speaking to me, and his eyes were looking at me, he's like, we have never had anything like this before. And I'm standing there, smallpox, Spanish flu, polio.
Can you just replace the alternator then? Like,
yeah.
Is there an upgrade alternator I can buy, or is it?
But I'm reading his body language. I was trying to read it. It felt like he was just so fearful that this is so brand new, that humans have never come across this type of virus before. And I'm like, yeah, we have, but
it's a problem of like cultural affluence. The same way that you get so rich, you forget the problems of poor people.
Yeah.
We have lived so long with the richness of not being susceptible to these debilitating diseases that we forget like what it's like to be safety poor. You know, and we're like, that's not really a problem. You could just not, it's just not there. And it's really easy to deny it.
I think something else that's at play here, that this is my own observation, I may be totally off, but it seems like humans and people and Americans are captivated by interesting stories, especially conspiracies, right? How entertaining is it to think
aliens?
Yeah, I mean, why do people have been talking about aliens since I was born, probably before that, right? So it's always been around, and then you go, well, okay, what's the proof? What do you got? What's new? And then it's always ends up being some tidbit that is interesting, and if you extrapolate it into some greater story, or if you think about some catastrophe, some end of the earth, then now you've got this captivating story, and it's hard for people, I think, to let go of captivating stories. And I would even pull that back to something like the Bible. You know, these religious stories, they're not boring stories. It wasn't like, yeah, he meditated and he showed other people how to be nice. It was like, oh, he's walking on water. He made, turned water into wine, and he made fish rain out of the sky, and then God split the ocean. And then, these people had to walk across the desert for 4 days. So these are all like interesting stories in a boring world. So I think if the story is interesting enough, people have a hard time disbelieving it, because then they have to let go of it. It's so much more interesting to think there's something there.
The grasping story is more real than what it is. People make it more real than what it is.
Yeah, but to me, it seems weird that why isn't there any reality checking? Why don't you just go, hey, that's interesting, but doesn't sound very real. That's the logical thing to me, but I see a lot of people not doing that. I see a lot of people
who want a mundane life. Life is so much more interesting when there's an antagonist, when there's something actively trying to keep you down, and you get to be the savior and you get to fight against it. Like, that makes your life so much more interesting.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't know everything. And so maybe I know that there are examples of things being created in labs. Mm-hmm. And so people could take an example of something like that and then connect it to this, where it was made in a lab in Wuhan. And now we even have government officials saying that maybe we need to look into this. Mm-hmm. Or, you have examples of governments poisoning their own people. Mm-hmm. And if A has happened before and B has happened before, even though it may be unlikely that it's happening in C, there's at least a little bit of precedence, and people will take that and run with it. Even a small little bit of proof, enough small pebbles make a mountain, right?
I like that analogy.
I'm gonna jump topics. So what does how are you part of it? How did you get started with that? And yeah, tell me everything about it.
Sure. So for a little while, I was the executive director of a nonprofit called Inventure. And so what we did is we would give young professional students like MD students or PhD students access to some of the experience in biotech that you don't get. PhD is kind of dumb in the sense that you spend like 6 years in a lab, you don't get any real practical skills, and then you leave and all you know is the one thing you studied. And so if you don't get an experience, you're just thrown to the wolves. And so we try to give students experience in building biotech companies or medtech companies or working for them or consulting. And we used to run this accelerator program where we take students who have an idea and then we help them grow and develop that idea. And then by the end of it, they're presenting to real investors. And I had a friend that I went to college with named Becca, and she went to Australia, she got her PhD, and she studied metabolism out there. And so she actually was coming back to Houston to participate in this accelerator program. So I was doing my role as executive director, putting on this accelerator called Bioventures, and she had a team, but they didn't seem particularly interested. And so when she's explaining the idea to me, it was like light bulb moment. Like, this idea is so fundamentally simple, like it's a paradigm shift. And paradigm shifts are all you put your money on. So after I resigned my position, I was like, let's do this. Let's run this company together. So we started in my living room, and we had like incubators and flasks and stuff.
Right where you're sitting right now?
No, other house.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a massive living room. But yeah, we had like everything was growing in my living room for like 6 months.
Wait, so can you and Becca accelerate my metabolism?
Eventually, we want to get there. Becca actually takes a little bit every single day. She calls it her Bexa Pro.
Yeah.
And she says that what she's noticed so far mostly is that she does intermittent fasting, and she can go for like 20 hours a day without feeling hungry.
Wow.
And so essentially what we want to do is like make all your cells more efficient, like any cell, any cell in culture. And so we want to get to humans, like eventually.
I like how she's eating it herself to make sure.
Yeah.
she's the lab rat.
Love that.
Yeah, I'll buy that. If Becca's eating it, she obviously is not worried about it.
It's fine.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously for the regular guy like me, the interest in increased metabolism is, I have trouble losing weight. Is that a correct correlation there, or is that an incorrect understanding of metabolism in our cells?
So the way that I like to explain it is it's more about efficiency. So there's like this cycle, like glycolysis or the Krebs cycle. Does that sound familiar at all?
Krebs cycle, yeah.
So basically you take one thing, you start with like an intake, and then you turn it in this circle and you get ATP, right? And you have to like burn some ATP to do it. So like the system costs energy, but you get energy from it.
Yeah.
But you have all the steps in between. So what we do is we just listen to the cells using bioinformatics, and we're able to give them exactly what they need so that they don't have to do all these intermediate steps. And if you don't do that, then it doesn't cost you all the energy, and you end up getting the same amount of energy, but you're losing less. So it's way more of an efficient process. And when the cell does that, it has way more energy to put into things like growth or productivity or to keeping itself healthy.
So it's kind of like a Prius versus a Ford Raptor?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, way more efficient.
Wait, you're saying that I could eat a whole lot less and get a lot more energy out of it. Is that what that translates to? Okay. The
ratio, yeah. So we effectively, like with these companies, what we're seeing is that we have to give them less nutrients in the beginning, and then we're seeing the same amount of growth. So that's how we're going to help them economically.
I was thinking for me, like I wanted to eat as much as I do as a fat American and then not gain as much weight.
We'll get there somehow.
Okay.
That'll happen too.
I need to figure that out.
Number one priority.
We're going to talk about money making. I'd pay for that shit.
There's one guy I know who's actually working with, it's practically that in a pill.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
man.
there's been a couple of them, but there's like a lot of safety problems. But yeah,
You
there's, like,
get too
people talking
skinny.
about it. Yeah.
Or you have to, it forces you to eat a lot. So like if you don't have a burger within 15 minutes, you start slowing down.
Pockets full of burgers everywhere you go.
That's fantastic. I'd like 8 burgers to go, please.
So
Separate bags.
you and Becca did that incubator, and then that led to.
Yeah, we did it all last year during the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Excellent.
So the incubator, all that we did with Inventure was we would take these student groups and we would eventually let them go in front of investors, but the pandemic cut that short. So we had to stop halfway through, and everybody was just kind of left drifting. And so we took it, and we were one of the only companies that kept running with our idea.
That is fantastic. Because looking at you, you look like a normal, cool guy, like a good-looking dude. Like if we met you on the street, you'd be like, "Oh, I just want to hang out with this guy," right? But it sounds like you're doing a lot of amazing things that are really fantastic scientifically and interactively, and building companies and really an eye towards the future of how do we change things, how do we change these industries. So that's really cool to discover this about you, because
Thank you.
you wouldn't know by looking at this guy in a t-shirt that he's doing big shit.
Realistically, I mean, both me and Becca are from poverty backgrounds. It's like there's always a drive to secure funding. Just you like check that in the back of your mind. But industry-wise, like I want to take over the alternative meat stuff specifically because like that's where my ethics are. Becca has her dad is very insulin dependent, and so we tried to get into insulin in the beginning for her ethics. So she wants to manage that, and then we have another co-founder who's very like venture capitalist type. So he wants to just like see this company grow. Yeah. So we all have like different sort of places on where we want to be and what would make us feel good about the company's success. But I mean, at the end of the day, we just want to make an impact. We want to do something big to fix everything that's messed up right now. We're super liberal, if you can't tell.
Is there a
damn college?
Is there specific clients that you look for? What would be the what are clients that you need for your company? How would that work out?
We have a lot of different clients right now. So we have not Johnson & Johnson, but Johnson & Johnson level companies that we are currently working with. So some very heavy hitters in the industry, like the pharmaceutical industry. And then we also have companies that explicitly do army contracts. And then we have companies that we're trying to break into like biodiesels, because they use a lot of like microbes to break down plastic and to produce like combustibles. So we want to get involved in that. There's this crazy guy. So back to the human stuff. There was this crazy guy. He ended up dying from steroids, but he patented basically what we do specifically for humans. And this guy was like 5 of me smashed together and ripped with muscle.
Incredible Hulk.
Tiny head, huge body.
I love it.
But he basically had this idea. I mean, he didn't take it very far, and he kind of stumbled on it because he had no scientific background. But he just like found the right line of thought and continued from it. But he was trying to get in the bodybuilding community with it. But eventually, we want to get into like what do they call that food where it's Soylent Green, I think, is where you only need to eat this and you'll be fine forever. That kind of stuff, So our client base is super wide. We just need solid revenue right now so that we can continue to build and pay these damn lawyers.
Yeah, that's a very smart point, is that you can't make any of those impacts if you can't have a sustaining business that can fund itself and stay alive. If you can't make enough money, you got to go get some other job to pay the bills, and then you're no longer working on the thing that you want to do to change the world.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. Based on what you said, I'm imagining making a cookie-shaped brick of meat that a soldier eats, and he can run on that all day and go fight everybody jacked up. Just superhuman meat cookie.
Me and Becca are super biased because Becca's the kind of person who survives off of coffee and like energy bars. And I've eaten the same salad for lunch for like 2 years, and I ate a can of beans for dinner. Wow. We're super low key. Yeah. So I think that, maybe the rest of the world wouldn't quite want to eat what we produce, but maybe we're biased in the sense like, no, everybody would be totally chill eating the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's tough because you could take my favorite pizza. I still wouldn't want to eat it every day. Or my favorite. Yeah. There's a certain thirst for variety, for sure. And that's certainly our first world spoiled kind of luxury, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing
the same salad all the time.
What was that?
Not for me, man. I eat the same salad every day for you.
well, describe the salad for us.
Oh,
Is it romaine lettuce?
Oh, no, I get way fancier. I have those 50-50 green mixes, like mushrooms, cucumbers, carrots, broccoli, all raw. And then I'll throw like some hummus, some honey mustard, and top it with some bell peppers. And just like all day, every day.
Wait, so are you calculating, in a day I need a certain mix and a certain amount of nutrients, and this salad covers a lot of those bases? Is that kind of the way you think about it?
I tried that once. Like when I was in college and I had a lot more time and energy to spend on doing these things, I would track my macros and stuff. But now I just figure if I make enough good choices, it'll balance out like the 6 donuts I have every single weekend or the ice cream. It's a balancing act, right?
Wait, what do you do on your weekends that you end up at 6 donuts? Like you could hit the bar.
You're saying how much I love donuts. Like every time I go to the grocery store, I'll buy 2.
Okay. I'm over here trying to limit myself. Like, if I don't eat more than 1 donut a month, I'll be all right. See, my metabolism's not fast enough to burn off all these donuts. If I could speed up my metabolism, I could eat whatever I want.
You can put some medicine in those donuts and make them effectively good. Problem solved.
Yeah, I mean, that's always my fantasy is as long if it tastes good and you could put nutrients in it. Give me something that tastes great and fulfills the nutrients without. I mean, that's the fantasy, I guess. A healthy donut.
That's when we know we're in the future. Like flying cars, whatever, but healthy donuts, man, that's it.
Yeah. You touched on this a couple times. Could you explain? I mean, it's something I'm aware of, but I don't really understand. Can you explain the insulin problem to us? Because from a basic, I don't have any personal contact with it, but from what I understand, a lot of people in the U.S. have diabetes, and you need insulin, and then insulin is super expensive because of the big biotech companies. Is that correct, or I don't understand insulin or why it's a problem right now, because it's not brand new, so it shouldn't be super expensive, and apparently it's cheap in other countries. So what is do you know what the insulin problem is, and can you explain it to me, who I don't know anything about it?
Yeah, I think, forgive me if I don't have full knowledge on this, but the way that I understand it is that it's a kind of a capitalism problem in the sense that the people who produce it and can patent it and can patent the processes to make it and all that stuff, they relatively have full control over the price. And even if there's multiple people even if there's multiple producers, they'll set a threshold. And so if you can go to Walmart right now, you can actually get an insulin analog for way cheaper. And I think there was recently just some proposal put in that was going to cap it at $50 a month. So right now we're looking at $600 a month per person just to have their insulin. And that's because it's not because that's how much it costs to make, or that's how much it costs to, logistically get it around the country.
Right.
It's just what the price was set at by the producers.
Okay, but currently there is something you can get at Walmart that basically is insulin. Is that currently possible?
Yep, it's an analog. I don't think everybody can take it, which I think is why there's still a big problem. But I mean, if you remember that guy, Martin Shkreli, the guy who stole the WuTang album?
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, there's this guy. Oh my God.
I barely know what a WuTang is.
Oh my goodness. Okay, podcast over. But
I know who Old Dirty Bastard is.
Yeah. I mean,
He's got my money.
Raw.
Yes.
He's this terrible guy that decided to take this drug and charge like $20,000 for it. And it's the rare kind of drug where, that not a lot of people have it. So there's not going to be a lot of pushback. There's not going to be a lot of
some big movement,
rallying cries. Yeah. So, and then he upped the price by 1,000% or so. And he just did it because he wanted the money. And later down the line, he actually purchased this single copy WuTang album, and he holds on to it, doesn't let anybody listen to it. But now he's in jail.
Okay.
So
So he can't
But,
even listen to it.
He might have heard it once, but I don't think he can listen to it anymore. There's no vinyl player from Dale, as far as I know.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just a producer problem.
Wait, how much did he pay for this? So WuTang made it a record that was only one record and nobody else can hear it.
They made one copy, one printing of a record, and then they sold it, and he bought it, and he didn't let anybody else listen to it.
Huh. Do you think he was a WuTang fan prior to buying it, or he just bought it because of that exclusivity and he loves torturing people?
A dick that thought that he probably never listened to Wu-Tang before that. He's like, man, cool people like Wu-Tang. So he just grabbed onto it.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. That guy.
Some of the technological or biological challenges that you guys are working on right now.
So we have this kid that works with us, and he's a legitimate genius. Like, this kid is 18 years old. He just got accepted to MIT. And he, last summer, represented the United States in the International Science Olympiad.
Wow.
Crazy genius. His name is Nitin Parsan. And he put together this bioinformatics stuff that, like, actually looks at, you take a sample of the cells, you analyze the genetics, it tells you what they're using, what they're actually eating. And yesterday my boss got mad at me because I didn't know how to compress a file to send it to her. I don't know anything about computers, and this is just a whiz. So as far as the technological stuff, I have absolutely no idea. That's not my side.
Well, I mean, I guess when I say technology, I'm also encompassing like the biological stuff too. Like, I think that's when I use, I guess in my mind, I'm using technology as an advancement in biology, chemistry, and all types.
I think one of the biggest things that we're struggling with right now is the fact that with any sort of cellular organism population, it's really hard to get consistency between one culture to the next. And so we're having problems where sometimes we'll see 600 population or 600% in growth. Sometimes we'll have like 200% increases in growth. And so we really have to fine tune and quality control everything to the point that it's going to be super consistent, and because it needs to be if we want to scale it and improve it.
Yeah.
But right now, the market we're working with is so new, and we're still pretty teeny tiny. There's only 4 of us on the team, and Becca's in lab all day because I'm still doing my PhD. So we need like way more resources, way more people, so that we can do super iterations and like all of these things that aren't necessarily problems. We just don't have the resources right now to fix them yet.
So are you saying, like, if you had 6 vats of meat and you wanted to take these cells and multiply them, you do your process and you do your improvements, you start with the same 6 things, you do the same 6 processes, and then you'll get 6 different results, as in these guys grew really well, this one was kind of weak, and is it a matter what's causing those differences, or you're still not sure what's causing the variation? Is that a accurate description or right way to question it? Okay.
Yeah, I hate working with live cells. Like in my PhD, sometimes I'll do things that are just like in a tube and they're without whole cells. And sometimes I'll work with whole cells. And I swear to God, the most frustrating thing, because you have to start an overnight culture so that you have fresh new cells in the morning. And sometimes, you'll start this overnight culture and in the morning, it doesn't grow. There's absolutely no reason why. You've done it a literal 1,000 times before. And these cells are just like, no, they just refuse to grow. And so there's so many disparities that happen, so many things that you can't control for with the complexity of the human body that, well, any cell really, that it's baffling. And we have no idea why.
So could you overkill it and then just try to make everything? Is that the solution? Is you overkill it, try to go everything to grow 1,000%, and then even if it fails, then we've got 1,000% over here. We got 1,000% over here.
Yeah, shoot from the moon, aim for the stars, right? I mean, if we can we just have to make enough economic difference to reach cost parity. So it doesn't have to be the world's perfect system. It just has to be enough to where people can afford it, enough to that they won't mind making a switch.
Yeah,
I would eat bioengineered nuggets right now.
From Alec, I would. Maybe from other corrupt corporations, I'd be fearful of. I imagine there's ethical things, right? Have you seen or heard, or can you describe what ethical means that companies could get a hold of some of these ways to produce this meat, and what would not be ethical in your mind?
So there's some thoughts where people say, like, why do we eat cows? Because it's the best meat out there. But it might not be. You know, we might find that lemur is the best meat out there in terms of nutritional availability and like healthiness. And so, you know, people are going to be exploring with different animals. That's going to be an inevitability. It's for simply the novelty of it. I mean, you can go to a Fuddruckers right now and get buffalo. And the first time I saw that, I was pretty mind blown. Yeah. But as far as the ethics goes, I think it'll be the same for any sort of food manufacturer. I mean, there might be some corner cutting, there might be some substitution with ingredients that maybe aren't up to par. There might be some sourcing problems, you know, getting things from animals that weren't raised properly. But I don't foresee anything that's going to be genetic, because like the process of it is so incredibly simple. You're just like taking a little biopsy and then flicking it in some soup and then it grows. That it's hard to be ethical there. But for a lot of things that are coming out right now, just in terms of the biological revolution, like CRISPR stuff, there's some CRISPR ethics that have been crossed, that have way been crossed. But there's also some things that like are going to be fundamental game changers as far as human existence, and they're already underway. They're already treating people with CRISPR. Like 2 weeks ago, they had this major breakthrough with CRISPR treatment. But then like last year, there was a guy who had to flee the country because he was doing some crazy ethical stuff.
What can we ask? What is the terrible CRISPR ethics breach?
Yeah. So there was a guy here in Houston at Rice University. What he did looks good on paper. So for anybody who's not familiar with CRISPR, what you're doing is basically editing DNA. It's very controlled and very precise. So you can do exactly what you want. And there's not a lot of complications. It's very targeted. There's not a lot of off-target random things that are going to add a lot of complexity. There are, but it's a lot more targeted than what we've done before. Okay. So what he did is he actually went to these two twin fetuses, these fetuses that would eventually be born into little girls, and he manipulated the DNA in a way that makes the cells totally resistant to the HIV virus. So the HIV virus has to recognize a certain thing that's on the outside of the cell, like a little signage. It's like, hey, enter here. And then the virus can enter the cell and you can get the HIV virus out in the body. So what he did is he just removed that sign. So he took it off and effectively rendered these two little fetuses completely inviolable to HIV. But that's, you know, well-intentioned as he was, as great as the proof of concept might have gone, that's crossing the line. Like there are complications, and a fetus can't consent to that, and you don't know what's going to happen down the line, and maybe there are some beneficial portions to having that receptor there. Wow. So he was working in collaboration with some scientists from China, and after everything came out, he fled. Like he just left the country that night.
So this happened in Houston, and he found a pregnant lady, or was it a test tube baby?
I don't know. I don't know about that part.
Okay. So, and then do you think, so as far as that CRISPR process, does that have to happen very early on in the development of the fetus?
No, wildly. Just 2 weeks ago, I wish I made this stock play because it shot up. But the lady who actually invented CRISPR, her name is Jennifer Doudna. She was one of the two people, actually. She just won a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
But she started the company, I think it's called Intellia. And what they're doing is they're treating this disease called ATTR. So the disease is similar to Alzheimer's in the sense that you get like protein plaques, and these plaques affect different parts of your body. But what she did is she's actually treating people that are all grown up. They're like 55, 60 years old. And she was just injecting them with mRNA, similar to the way the vaccine works. So she's inserting CRISPR materials using mRNA systems, and then she's curing these people of something that kills them in like 5 years.
Wow. Okay. That's fascinating.
Would you say, so that guy that was doing that on a fetus, the start of his research would seem ethical, and or it had a
I need these twin girls to not get AIDS.
Yeah, it's well-intentioned. It looks good on paper.
Is there a way that you would suggest there's a way to carry that out a little bit, or ethically? Is there a way to do that research, get the theory tested?
But do it on old people that are about to die anyway.
Well, or is there some other cells that you could produce that would mimic a fetus? Or I don't know. I don't know how I don't know enough about this. Is there a way to ethically do it on something else that's not a fetus? Maybe.
Can you make fake babies?
I don't know. I mean, maybe you can do something with stem cells because stem cells turn into other cells, where you can like make stem cells turn into a kind of cell that would eventually get this receptor, and then you can kind of mess with that. They're also doing things with organoids where you can like grow a heart in a lab.
Oh.
So maybe you can make like a structural fetus of some kind. Maybe, I don't know. But there's probably some way around it, but it's just not quite the same as taking a live baby and taking it all the way, you know?
Yeah, so
Like
if you can grow a heart in a lab, then that independent heart, there's no ethics of there's no person to violate, right? It's just an organ. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating.
And the heart cells came from somebody who donated the heart cells, so like everybody's on board, and it's pretty crazy what they can do.
Okay, so the ethics of AIDS proofing these babies is that they couldn't consent. Mm-hmm. So did they actually get born? Are they alive?
I think so. Okay. I'm pretty sure that they were born at the last. Maybe I'm misremembering, but for some reason it's very glaring in my mind that they were born.
Is there some concern that change that makes them AIDS proof will have a whole lot of other effects throughout their life and to their genetic structure? Is the concern that there's some unintended consequences?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you never know, because so these virus receptors, there's a chance that they also let in other viruses, and humans have tons of viruses in our bodies. Viruses that are bacteriophages that just kill bacteria, or viruses that just float around, and you usually use them in order to build up your immune system, or to just expose yourself to different things, or maybe just to kill off bad bacteria in your gut. Mm-hmm. But the fact that now they no longer have those receptors, we don't exactly know what may happen, because we don't know every single thing those receptors are used for. Mm-hmm. So yes, we are completely sure that they won't get HIV, but any other intense consequences, we have no idea.
Do you know that guy that fled? See, we're captivated by interesting stories. Did he flee to China?
Yeah, that night he just up and took off.
Oh, and then do you know if China as a country has a stance of like, hey, if we find him, we'll send him back to you? Or are they like, I don't know what you're talking about. He may be here. Do you know? Yeah.
I mean, they definitely have. There are other countries like China and Russia have been found implicated in some serious biological ethics issues. And you never know what testing is happening underground. The fact that we found a couple means there's probably more. Mm-hmm. But as far as the details go, like, who knows? It's crazy.
I bet you Russia's trying to make Captain America's.
Well,
I'm sure.
Well, Captain Russia's.
With the Olympics, I mean, they have like the biggest scandal. Have you guys seen that movie Icarus? I think it's called. There's like the Olympic Village was in Russia, and then they had like the medical team where the athletes go and get tested for steroids and whatnot, and they literally the Russian team that was allowing steroids for the Russians, there's literally like a big hole in the wall where they would pass. Someone would give their pee test to show that they're free of steroids, but they're not. So then in this big hole through the wall of the bathroom and one office where the medical center is, they're passing clean pee through this wall, and it's like. It was this whole huge thing where everyone is doped up. Everyone, not even just the Russians, because the Russians were, if you pay enough to the Russians, they'll dope you up. And this guy, he did a whole documentary, a 2-hour, 3-hour documentary. He went in trying to win the Tour de France. He just wanted to see if he did one not doped up, one doped up, and it led him eventually to the guy that led the whole thing for the Russian Olympics, the drug doctor that would test for steroids and stuff, and that guy was doping him up for his Tour de France, and then it was amazing. So, anyways, I'm sorry, I went off.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
I like pee. Oh, is that where you're going with that?
So, what for the on the ethical, like why this sounds? I know this is a stupid question, but I'm just going to ask it anyways. Why can't they do it like on a mouse instead of a fetus? Is it because HIV and AIDS will not affect a mouse? I'm guessing.
That I don't know, but I do know that with a lot of things, like a lot of medicines fail in like early testing because you'll see some results in mice and then you'll take it to phase 1 where you do like a handful of people and it just doesn't happen. Like mice are like super similar. I think it's like 46 to 48% similarity, but they're also super crazy different. Like so many things will work in mice and make them like these super mice that are impervious to sickness. And then you put it in a human and there's absolutely nothing. So it could be an effect there, or it could be that, you know, like they have done it in mice and they transitioned it to people. I mean, they probably did. They probably did it in mice or dogs or monkeys or whatever they do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, back to that Icarus story. I think I was trying to bring it up because sorry, I just remembered why.
Love good stories.
I'm glad it came back.
So that guy, that Russian guy, he got how did it happen? I think, oh man, I don't remember the story. He is running from the Russian government now because somehow he got caught from the what's the international body that I don't think it's the UN that deals with drugs for the Olympics, but they're saying that he's the
It's definitely not the UN.
It's like a UN body that does.
Yeah, there's an international testing.
Yeah. So they call him out and they want to arrest him. He found out ahead of time and he's trying to flee Russia. As he's finding out the Russian government's not going to back him, they're going to throw him under the bus because of course the Russian government doesn't want to admit that they've been doping everybody.
You got us.
Yeah.
We were cheating.
So now he's currently in America. He's hiding and his wife and kids back in Russia, and it's just crazy. So I was thinking about the story when you said the doctors that went to China and they're probably hiding, I'm guessing. But in this case, this Russian guy's hiding in America on I think some type of what do you call the embassy where you could get where you think you could
asylum.
Asylum, yeah. He's here on asylum, I think.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's crazy.
We just traded 1 for 1 with crazy unethical people.
Yeah. I guess unethical doctors, just go to another country if you're in trouble.
Yeah.
The ethnical considerations. What race were these AIDS-proof babies? Were they Chinese babies?
Or you talking? Or the doctors, or the
no, different story. I'm just being silly.
So
we've gone down a deep
yeah, we have.
detour.
Let's jump back to. I think you did your PhD on cell stress. Is that correct?
Right.
Explain to me what cell stress is.
So basically, what I do is, in a big nutshell, there are these little custodian proteins called chaperones in every cell. Every living cell has them.
I tried to do some research on that, and like within the first like 2 sentences on a Wikipedia page, I'm like, holy shit, I don't get it. So hopefully you could explain to me much better than Wikipedia.
So that's the problem with science communication, first of all. So when I first got to Houston, I started making this blog called Clutch City Science. And my whole point of that was to try to do things and write articles and explain them so that my grandma would be interested in them. So like fundamentally just explaining science, like you forget how far you have to back up to have somebody understand what you're doing.
Yeah,
let me give it my best shot. And if it still doesn't make sense, let me know.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I'm with you on custodians.
Perfect. Yeah. So in every single living cell, there's a bunch of proteins floating around. And proteins do like everything in the cell. Like they're responsible for pretty much every action that happens in a cell. And what's really, really important about proteins is they have to be in the correct shape. Like shape is everything for a protein. So there's these other proteins, these like a little bit higher level proteins like custodians or managers, and they're called chaperones. So chaperones kind of float around and they make sure everybody's in the correct shape. And if they're not, then they'll fix them. And if they're not and they can't fix them, then they'll degrade them and they'll get rid of them so they're not poisoning. And so a lot of the times these chaperone proteins will be affected by things like crazy heat or pollutants or oxidation like reactive oxygen species, the thing that are attacked by antioxidants. So there's a lot of these weird pollutants that'll come in and they'll affect these chaperones in a way that's like, okay, high alert. Like, then you get involved with some of the stress system. So once the chaperone proteins sense any sort of stress, they'll flip on the switch to the stress system, and then that will kind of put the cell on high alert to fix everything. So what I study is very specifically one chaperone protein and how it reacts to oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is things like some of the things in cigarette smoke, or actually some of the natural things that happen when you produce energy in the cell. A lot of reactive oxygen species. So ROS was a big thing for a long time when people were talking about you got to have a bunch of antioxidants.
Yeah.
And antioxidants actually neutralize ROS. So that's what I study, and what happens to the cell when these chaperones are exposed very specifically to oxidative stress.
So is it good for me to eat dark chocolate, or am I fooling myself?
No, I mean, it is good if you have antioxidants, because ROS mess up everything. Like, they'll mess up your fats, your DNAs, your proteins. Like, they just stick to everything and mess it up. So dark chocolate all day.
All right. You're my favorite scientist so far.
Dark chocolate, red wine, that's the way to stay healthy.
Oh, dark chocolate and wine too, huh?
Yeah, there's a bunch of antioxidants, like green leafy vegetables.
Spinach.
And I mean, they're not going to do everything, but they will have some big implications. So actually, okay, I love getting into this.
So don't smoke, eat spinach.
Yeah. And oxidative stress is one of the biggest causes for aging in the cell. So if you stop oxidative stress, then you effectively elongate the lifeline of a cell like 50%. So that's why smokers look so old, is because they have all these intoxicants that are getting into their skin and killing off all the collagen cells, and it super speeds up the aging of a cell. So what they're trying to do right now is, kind of kill off aging, or at least slow it down, by using these ROS scavengers or these antioxidant proteins. So it's very detrimental.
Oh, dude, if you could make a cigarette that was full of nutrients instead of poison.
Why has nobody thought of that? That's super easy.
I don't think, burning formaldehyde may not be good for your body, but... I
mean, just at least one and one so they cancel each other out.
That'd be fantastic.
From your view of the chaperone, like, would you say that's like an error checking mechanism created by the body?
Yeah. It's one of the first preliminary systems in the body. Like, it's found in every single cell. It's one of the most produced proteins in a cell. Like, it's super, super important.
Like, if I want to say what came first, the chicken or the egg, I would want to say what came first, the protein or the chaperone? It would have to be the protein, right? Would that seem?
Yeah, it's weird because chaperones are proteins. They're just like these meta proteins. So they're structurally a little bit more strong than other proteins, and they're very conserved. So this one protein machine has been fine-tuned to the point where throughout evolution, every cell is held onto it. So through evolution, some things change, some things, get left behind, or you bring new things in. But this one machine is so important that throughout the entire lineage of living cells on Earth, it's been pretty much maintained.
Well, because if your proteins are mutating too much inside your cell, you're going to have no consistency, and any advantages that you might have in one example will not reproduce if there's no consistency there. I
think that makes sense from a logical level, but I don't know. It's just a random thought. I'm thinking say the first cell that ever lived, that probably wanted to produce like crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the very first organism or cell that ever lived probably didn't even think about having, not that it thought, but
no, it all happened by accident.
Yeah, so I don't think I have no idea. I don't know.
I see what you're saying. So the very first cell, it had a bunch of proteins around, and they had no management. They were just running around wild doing whatever they want. There was
it's a party.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden this manager comes in, randomly. That was just, it probably started as a different protein, because there are other proteins in the cell that have very similar functions. So you tweak it a little bit, and suddenly it gains a little bit of loss of function or gain of function. And then it's like, okay, let's keep that. Like, we got it by accident, but like, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Just keep it.
Yeah.
So I imagine like first, there was probably like just rampant misfolding of proteins and just like total cell death. But then one cell just happened to get lucky, produce something like that by accident and just kind of stuck.
Ah, so okay. That's what I was thinking it would lead to that. So probably like, I'm just going to reword basically what you said. So probably then the next few organisms that was successful probably somehow created a chaperone, and that chaperone, that one cell was so successful at living because it had a chaperone, and so that maybe all the other organisms or cells were just mutating so bad and not having any consistencies, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like even logically, if that cell is any healthier because of the presence of that chaperone, it can live longer and produce way more babies.
Oh, yeah.
And so it generally just starts to kind of take over because these other cells aren't living as long, aren't having as many predecessors, and just like logically, exponentially, like that thing just kind of maintains.
Fascinating.
So I'm going to kind of connect it to, I think it's the movie, was it Watchers? Shoot, I forget the name of it. So the Guardians of the Universe, who watches the Guardians of the Universe? So the chaperone, what controls them? What if they go ape shit and then they start killing all the cells and they don't
Then you just die.
Or what if they misbehave? In your experience, when you see bad chaperones, how does that work out?
Okay, sometimes the cells actually do just die. Like they'll just apoptosize and they'll be like, okay, I'm gonna take one for the team. I'm just committing suicide, and that cell will die. But effectively, there's a couple different ways to do it. So chaperones also double check each other. So there's a lot of like interference between different kinds of chaperones, and even the same chaperone will affect itself. But there's also like a lot of
one chaperone could actually kill the other chaperone.
Yeah, like if you have one chaperone that's super misfolded, another one will come and drag it into the place where they all get degraded and essentially just like melt it down.
Crazy.
They have no loyalty whatsoever. But,
you are incorrect.
yeah, there's robots. But there's also a lot of ways where you can affect expression of cells. So sometimes some proteins are made really high in some situations, and then it's toned down for a different situation. So that's the stress system part of it. So like when you have an external stress on the cell, like super high heat, then the cell will recognize it and will ramp up some proteins and then turn down others. So that kind of functionality comes into play too. It's all like crazy complex, and it's not amazingly well characterized. There's a lot of pieces that people are still putting together, but the biologics of it are like fast. Like it's mathematically beautiful. The way that it all like fine tunes, all like checks and balances everywhere. It's crazy.
Well, I try to search, I think protein folding. I think it was one of the, I forget if you sent that in your document before this, but so from what I watched, if this helps you at all, I admit that like,
I'm the dumb guy in this conversation.
I only watched I watched 3 minutes of a video. I was like,
you're 3 minutes ahead of me.
yeah. So I'm going to explain the 3 minutes in about 20 seconds. So there's 20 amino acids to the protein, and the protein it has a set way, those 20, as close as like amino acid number 3 to number 16, if they happen to fold that way, they could fold in a 3D way.
Right.
And if 17 is close to 3, they might do something. You don't know what it does. They may benefit from each other. But also, if you try to morph it and then break it apart, they may fully break. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that what cell stress is? Are you trying to modify it and not break it? Is that what because that specific fold almost has to stay that way. If you try to move it too much, sorry, the microphone, when I try to look at Emma and talk, it's like kind of awkward.
Yeah, don't look at me. I'm enjoying it too much.
We've done like 50 something podcasts and this still comes up. Okay, so if it folds a certain way and you try to make it do something new, you're going to break it. But you also lose the benefits of what 3 and 17 may do, or whatever number that it's next to. And there's so many complex foldings where 3 could be next to 17 and 20 and number 5, or it could, whatever, that would be a different protein altogether? Is that if?
Yeah, it's crazy how much it's just physics based. So it's really fundamentally as simple as some of these amino acids like water and some of them don't. So within the cell, like cells are 70% water. And so when you're floating around and you're a protein, the ones that like water are going to be on the outside, and the ones that don't like water, they're all going to hug together on the inside so they're not exposed, right? And the ones that are on the outside are the ones that are reactive with other things, so they can like talk to other proteins in a sense or just interact with a lot of different things. But what's keeping the shape is what the globular inside form looks like. And the shape is everything. The shape is what decides, you know, this guy is going to interact with this protein and these two ends are going to touch. Because if they're just formed just differently, then these two parts can't interact, right?
Yeah.
So what happens mostly in protein misfolding is that some of these internal parts are exposed. And that is actually what a lot of these chaperones are recognizing. They're like, whoa, that's supposed to be on the inside. You must be broken. And so they'll undergo these processes to try to either stuff it back in there or be like, I can't fix you, it's time to die.
What would cause the, so you're saying the water thing, why would some go out and some be inside? Isn't water at a, wouldn't, I don't know anything about this. Wouldn't water, the molecule, be bigger than the cell is and the cell wouldn't care? Or
No, cells are much bigger than water molecules.
Oh.
Yeah, so a cell itself is like 70% water, and like within a cell is kind of like a gusher, like you know, those fruit candies.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's just like a jelly inside of it, and it's mostly water. But it's kind of like when you just pour oil into water. You know, like their intrinsic properties will make them separate. And so the things that are on the inside are more oil-like, and so they just inherently don't like water. They're hydrophobic is what it is. And then everything on the outside is just physically, like the magnetic interactions of it are just more able to react with water because water is very polar.
Is
lipids.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the things that make up lipids are basically on the insides of proteins.
Explain to me lipids.
Fatty, oily stuff. That's not water.
Is that it? Is there anything?
Yeah,
Is there a reason for lipids? Where are they from? Why
I paid attention in high school.
Lipids are basically like, you want a membrane, right? Because a membrane is what closes everything you want inside versus the outside. So when you have a cell, because cells all pretty much start in water, a membrane is just that one sheet of like fattiness that's going to all compact together and protect everything that's inside that makes up the cell versus everything from outside. So also like your mitochondria, like the surrounding layer of that, the outside capsule, that's a lipid. And everything that's inside of it is what constitutes that mitochondria. So like lipids are really important just for like delineating this versus that.
A separator structure.
Exactly.
So is it fair to say that chemistry is a subset of physics in that you're looking at a certain scale? If you have certain structures, these structures tend to interact in a certain way just because of the rules of physics, just because that's the physics of how they interact. And if you have the right situation and the right pieces, then you have organic chemistry in that these structures can create cells or form life and form reproduction in some complex way.
Exactly. It goes math, physics, chemistry, organic chemistry, biology, and then you get into like sociology, you know, then the human studies.
Okay, so each one follows the other by necessity, right?
It's all physics.
When they call that protein folding, because the cells are like kind of, I mean, they're spinning around each other and they're kind of folded, but are from your research as a PhD and whatnot, is it more unfolding than folding for what you're researching?
Do you fold or unfold?
I go either way, you know. But a lot of it is mostly everything starts off folded. Like as soon as the protein's made, it's folded. And then as it goes through its life, it's a lot of unfolding. So the problems in the cell all come from unfolding. And then it's mostly just like carefully trying to maintain your herd of cats. You know, one runs away and you got to bring it back. And then if that cat's just like totally gone, you'd like throw that cat away and it's not a problem anymore. But It's just trying to not let this thing fall down that you've already created.
Yeah.
So I'll throw something abstractly, I guess a little bit abstractly to you. So I was playing this game called Borderlands, and they had a mini game in the game where I could get extra experience points by playing this game. And supposedly what they're doing is trying to figure out this puzzle on the screen was getting uploaded to medical servers that would help protein folding. Was it actually it trying to figure out new folds, or is it trying to figure out an unfolded protein? And what would you think that, what would a gamer playing some puzzle help that? Well, how would
No, I love that. That's a huge program that is like really, really cool. I forget what school it comes out of. It might be Stanford, but they created that technology where, okay, so like when you're looking at a lot of the things in a cell, what you end up with is like this kind of a line of code. But the line of code is just like what amino acids are there. And there's like a million billion ways that it could be turned and twisted to make that 3D structure that matters. But a lot of the times, all they have are just like the A to Z order of what those amino acids are like. And so there's a likeliness, but there's also going to be a way that mathematically makes sense for that hydrophobic versus hydrophilic ratio. And so they created these programs. I don't know how they integrated in a game. When they gamified it, that's genius.
So
yeah, people were doing it voluntarily.
It's kind of like not quite Bejeweled and not quite Tetris. So there was, you got to flip this. I'm just going to explain the puzzle in the game, and I don't know if it helps you think about why they did it. It had a counter on how many there was a counter at the top left, and you wanted to reach, say, 90 points for whatever it is. There's certain combinations that you change the color of that brick, you flip it, and you're trying to reach the maximum number with the amount of bricks that they give you. So say on that puzzle, this specific puzzle had, I don't know, say 40 bricks, and it gave you the last person, the highest number that they got was 86. You want to either get 86 or up to 90. Theoretically, I guess they somehow figured out 90 would be the max points on that puzzle, and the average person, or the average gamer that played that could get up to 86 or whatever. So you're flipping these to match the colors and get the most combinations. And in this specific game, the most combinations you could go by rows, but by the same color or same picture color.
Were you really good at it?
I don't know how to describe good, because I mean,
did you beat 86?
On some of them I did. And
okay.
And some of them I actually had to start over. I spent like 5 minutes and I didn't figure out I had to hit.
You dumbass, you're doing free science for people.
Yeah. I had to hit reset and then redo it from the beginning, and then luckily get the connection. So you want to get the most rows. That gives you a bonus. And then also as the ancillary hills and peaks of those colors, you may not, you can't connect those ones. So you just do the best to get the most connections. So I don't know if that gives you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, the higher score is probably like the mathematical likelihood that could exist in an organic setting. So yeah, that sounds exactly like what that program is, but they just put it into a game. That's super interesting. I didn't know that existed at all, but yeah, that's basically what you're doing is protein folding.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Slave. You know how we're talking about healthy cigarettes and if we can replace deep fried chicken? I eat all the time because I feel hungry. And I imagine if I could just stuff something in my stomach, I wouldn't feel hungry. So have you seen those, they're for kids, these little capsules, and you put it in the bathtub and then it turns into a sponge dinosaur? So is there a capsule of something I can eat and then it turns into a sponge in my stomach and then I don't feel hungry and then I just poop out a dinosaur?
I mean, okay, maybe not poop. That sounds awesome. Pooping out dinosaurs. But I mean, there are animals that eat rocks so that they break stuff down. Like if you have the stones for it, got it? Right.
Yeah.
For it, swallow some rocks.
Yeah, but I'm surprised it's not a thing. Inert food that doesn't get absorbed by your body. I mean, am I totally wrong in that idea that if I fill up my stomach with something, I won't feel hungry? I don't know. This is probably not your specialty.
Some noodles that are 0 calories. It's just mass. And the mass to actually break it down is more than the calories that's in it. So like you eat them and it's literally nothing except foam, basically. It's like organic foam.
Yeah. Okay, 0 calorie noodles is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Just like put a nice sauce on there and just like all day.
Yeah.
They taste awful.
I was just gonna ask, what's the name and does it taste bad?
So bad.
Oh, well, so if they could compact that into a pill, then you're not chewing and eating, right? I
Yeah.
need something that would expand and, yeah. Okay, so I need some 0-calorie noodles compressed into a pill.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
it like just life rafts in your stomach.
Yes. We're fixing all of America's obesity problems right now.
Yeah. Get the government in on this.
We're figuring it all out on this podcast in 3 hours. For the cell stress thing, what would you summarize as what's the benefit of trying to figure that out? Like, as in, there's probably so many things, but what do you see as the most beneficial thing?
Why are you stressing out these cells, man?
Ooh, I love that. The only thing that comes out of my lab is stuff specific to like Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's or Huntington's disease. So it's all very neurodegenerative disease based, because a lot of these are based on protein folding or protein misfolding. Because when proteins misfold, they just glob together, and that's how you get the plaques that are in the brain. And so if we can sort of solve these protein misfolding problems, then we won't have these plaques form, and maybe we won't have these diseases. But a lot of people are trying to solve it for like the aging stuff, for trying to make people live longer, or to fix some muscle stuff, some muscle regeneration stuff. But
Yeah, old people got money.
implications, yeah.
I guess I'm stupid. What's the plaque thing in the brain?
So when, like with Alzheimer's, what's happening is you're getting all these little tiny misfolded proteins, but they stick together super well. And they stick together and they form like these grid-locked flat things. And the flat things will just continue to stack up. And so like these teeny tiny units will get super big, and they'll go and they'll kind of sit in your brain cells and they'll kill them. So that's how you end up with things like Alzheimer's, is just these buildup of plaques.
What happens? Where's the chaperones from those guys?
So the chaperones.
What the fuck are the chaperones doing?
Yeah, you lazy fuck. Sometimes they don't recognize them. Sometimes the bonding is just so tight that they can't do anything about it. I don't know exactly. The one thing they're doing is trying to inject chaperones right into the brain to see if it helps it, and it does help it, but it has a bunch of side effects too.
It's almost probably like I'm guessing.
It's like sticking a needle in your brain.
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking probably like it's when they do what's the for radiation treatment for cancer, but
Chemo.
Chemo. I'm guessing it's not related, but I'll connect the analogy. It's targeting. It's doing. Now I guess that one's on chemo's just kind of eradicating it all, but I guess this one's you're trying to build a chaperone, but the chaperone may be maybe killing things you don't want it to kill, I guess. So I guess it is
A
different.
lot of unintended effects.
Okay. It's awesome.
All right. Do you think there's progress in that field right now? Are we close to attacking Alzheimer's? Are we making progress, or is it? I don't know. Maybe we'll have a breakthrough. Kind of.
I would say that within our lifetimes, we will not have to suffer from these diseases anymore.
Awesome.
Oh.
So we're making significant and measurable progress towards.
Yeah, especially when you look at that CRISPR one I told you about earlier, the one that got solved in like a 55-year-old. That is a plaque disease. So that comes from misfolded proteins. And they just like took out the protein that's misfolding, because a lot of the times they're not super necessary. Like the balance is like, okay, you're totally going to die and in a horrible way, or you maybe don't have some of these other things that protein does. So it's an easy decision to make.
Nice.
But they effectively cured it. And that is a very similar disease.
So we're close.
From the
Oh.
for this degenerative disease that you're trying to eradicate, is it more? Are you trying to like attack the chaperone, the protein, or are you trying to prevent it even before that? What's the approach that you're taking?
So I think the biggest thing you can do, aside from just taking the protein out, is to stop them all globbing together. So if you can stop that step, then you never get those plaques, and then you never get the onset of the disease. So that's something that protein chaperones can help with. But there's also removal of plaques, which is super hard. You have to have some like jacked up chaperones to do it. But it's also a feasible way to treat it, for sure. I don't know where they are on these things. And granted, like the disease that they solved, it's like liver centric and it's very, very niche. So like it's not a totally big parallel. I don't want to make too big of claims, but I will say that within our lifetime, for sure.
When producing the alternative meat, what's the chemical or biological challenge? I think I asked that earlier, but I guess I keep on trying to combine cell stress and that, but I know they're different. So what are your challenges there?
So for the cell stress, a lot of the times, like in normal cellular processes, when you're creating this ATP, it's like ATP is like the energy of the cell, you're actually also creating a lot of ROS. So there's like a trade-off where you need energy, but you're kind of low-key killing yourself to get it. And so if you can have a state where you don't have to produce as much energy, you also don't end up producing as much ROS. So if you can fine-tune the metabolism to where it can go further on the same amount of gas, then you don't have to create as much ROS, the cell doesn't take as much damage, and effectively, like, we can kind of stop the damage and allow these cells to live longer by controlling their metabolism as well.
I think you explained that earlier, didn't you? I'm sorry if I'm re-asking the same question.
No, you might have. I might have totally misanswered your question.
So is that at the while creating the alternative meat, or is that on the human? Is that inside the human that's happening?
All cells, actually. Any cell that has a mitochondria, so any cell that produces ATP using the same way that humans and animals and mollusks and yeast do, they'll take that damage.
So if you have lab-grown meat cells, can you stress them out to grow faster?
You can, yeah. So Joe Rogan loves what do you call them? Saunas. Huh. And so what saunas are doing is inducing your heat shock response. So the heat shock response is one of these stress management things. And what it does is cleans up the cell. A similar one is autophagy. So like when people talk about intermittent fasting, what they're trying to do is induce autophagy. So autophagy is another cell management where you go and you clean up all the dirty stuff in the cell. So if you stress cells out, they actually kind of react in a way that rebuffs all their defense systems, and you do get some healthy stuff out of it. So that's why saunas are good.
Well, so we're in Las Vegas, and we've had like a straight month of like over 100 degree, like it was 117 yesterday. Like, so when I step outside the front door, is that a heat shock cell affecting thing?
Yeah, you'll totally get heat shock.
Oh, okay. So that's good for me to go.
Too long, but yeah.
Yeah, I think on the Joe Rogan one, they're saying something about 15, 20, and 30 minutes. I think you don't want to go over a certain amount. I think something like over 30 minutes. I'm not sure. I think that's what I was hearing.
So yesterday I was showing houses. So it was like go into the air conditioning for 5 minutes, come outside to get to the car, drive to the next place while the car is trying to cool down. And then you get there just in time for the AC to, and then so it's in and out for like half a day. So it's a weird hot, cold.
Well, I mean, earlier the AC hit 77 degrees. That's why I was sweating. We just set up 3 fans. Unfortunately, for whatever reason today, maybe there's 2 air conditioners in this house. And
are they losing the battle?
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see the cellular stress of those AC units afterwards. But anyways, what was the word you said for fasting or starving, and then that your body? What was the word?
Autophagy. There's intermittent fasting, which leads to autophagy.
Autophagy. So there's a study that an article about a study where they looked at kids that had parents from the Holocaust, because the parents in the Holocaust, they starved for many days and weeks. So they were able to study the kids, and these kids had a benefit in their, I could be saying some of these things wrong, but in their cells or their body benefited because their parents went through this massive stress on their body of starvation. So these kids, the genetics were passed down where they're able to handle certain stresses much easier. I thought it was crazy that genetics in one generation can be altered that much. It makes sense, I guess, but it just sounds crazy.
Yeah, there's a super interesting study on mice. So you can't really too much change DNA structurally, But you can do what's called epigenetics, and that'll affect how the DNA is used. So there's this really crazy study where they had mice, and then that mouse would have babies. And so the babies would be taken away from the mother. And so they would be put in a very high stress, very, it's kind of an abusive situation. But basically, it took away from the mother.
Just like cat posters everywhere?
Do what?
Well, how do you stress out baby mice? Like you have cat posters everywhere and
it just
hawks.
Freaking out,
yeah.
like a big bird tattoo. But they took them away from their mother, and they found that it had really high impact on the brain. So these mice effectively had, I guess you can think of it as like trauma.
Yeah.
So the trauma signals were found in those mice as babies. So the stress that was found from the daughter mouse passed to the grandchild mouse. And so that grandchild mouse basically underwent the same trauma without experiencing it.
Weird.
Yeah. Okay. By chance, I don't remember the study of that Holocaust and the children. What do you think would have been the benefit on the children? I don't remember the result of that article. If you had to guess what it was, what do you think it was?
If I had to guess something, it's either like higher stress that was, it ended up relegating something to a higher level, which helped with some sort of stress management, or maybe it was metabolic in the sense that like it just slowed.
Metabolic. That sounds, I remember that word in the article. Yeah, I think that was probably it.
You should be a damn scientist.
They ended up eating less food or something.
Yeah. That's crazy. So let's jump to, if you don't mind, you said you grew up in poverty. What tell me about that.
Let's talk about your childhood trauma.
Yeah, let's just jump into that straight. Great segue,
Sorry. Speaking of Holocaust survivors, how bad was your childhood?
Yeah, so to be perfectly frank, my childhood was nuts. So I was born to a single mother who was addicted to drugs for the majority of my upbringing. Very hard drugs.
Wow.
And I never knew my father. To this day, I still don't know who he is. But there's a lot of sort of classical things that come with that. There's a lot of physical abuse, a lot of mental abuse, a lot of, food insecurity, a lot of going to school in the same clothes all week, a lot of just very, very uncomfortable situations. Like there was times where we lived in hotels or we didn't have running water and electricity. And it was pretty rough. And we actually, for a long time, lived in this part of Albuquerque. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's locally called the War Zone. So if you like Google the War Zone Albuquerque, like it comes up.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and it was nuts. So like one of the things that really captures this well is when I was in 4th grade, there was like 2 groups of us. Like one was like the group that I ran with, and then there was this other group. And we just inherently didn't like each other. And one of the kids from the other group brought a machete to school and tried to hack us to death with it.
Holy shit.
And he was tackled by this adult, and they took him away. And the next day I had to switch schools. But the crazy thing is like, we'd heard about it that morning that he had one.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of talking about it, and I'll never forget looking to this other kid, and I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? This kid's going to kill us. And he looks at me like right in the eyes and just way too calm with the gravitas that a 4th grader should not have. He just kind of says like, if it's your time, it's your time. You try to put your mind in a happy place and just like go with it.
Wow.
And that sort of weird encapsulation of violence and wisdom in a 4th grader was just like, and it was normal. It was so normalized. And so like eventually some crazy thing happened, and I got taken away. Both me and my sister were taken out of my mom's custody. So from when I was 15 to 18, or 14 to 18, I lived with my uncle. And so that was a much more stable environment.
That is an extraordinary and unfortunate upbringing for any American. We're used to a lot more security and safety and stability. And how do you think that shaped who you are? I mean, obviously these are, a machete in 4th grade is not something most people experience. The machete was after me. You could have chopped my head off.
So the crazy thing is that there is such a spectrum of reaction. So one time my uncle came into my room because my sister, she didn't handle things as well. And she, to this day, maybe has some different coping mechanisms. But he came into the room that I lived in, my uncle, and he asked me, like, why aren't you affected at all? Like, why are you effectively normal? And I didn't understand it at the time, but I had been doing kind of just a more subdued reaction to it, and it ended up actually culminating in this major breakdown series. And like, I was so emotionally stunted. Like when you're in a situation that just, you have to survive, like you don't have the energy to put towards things like self-actualization or developing good relationships. That's like Maslow's hierarchy. And I was super stunted. So when I got to like the high school level, a lot of things started popping up. A lot of kind of mental things and a lot of relationship things started appearing out of nowhere, and caused me a lot of weird stresses. But now that I'm sitting in a good place, I would not change anything about my upbringing.
Right.
It was so fundamentally tied to who I am as a person now, and the choices that I make now, and the things I care about, and the actions that I do, that now it's a blessing. But there are so many people who aren't as lucky to end up in a nice position, and it is traumatizing. So for me personally, it's okay, but
there's times where I try to explain. So the drama in my life is, I mean, I would say hearing your story, like I'm gonna tell my story a little bit, but
you win.
You win. But I think at the end, I want to try to say that when I try to explain these levels of trauma to other people that don't understand, that seem to have such a better life and don't realize it, and I try to explain to them, well, you can't be sitting on a pedestal and judging people below you. You don't know what they've been through. And I'll explain to them my drama, and I tell them, after I tell them my drama, there's other people that have it way worse than I do. So try to put yourself in their shoes if you can. So anyway, when you said that, when you were like in high school, that drama in your head kind of played out, and it kind of stunted your growth. I think for me, so my upbringing, I've never ever had a day of where I didn't have food, so I'm grateful for that, and I always had a place to sleep. That was something I always had. But what the drama that played out for me was living in an all white neighborhood, and I was one of the few Asians, so I had an identity crisis. And Emmett's at this point has heard this story probably too many times, so he's probably bored of it. But
you mean trauma, not drama, right?
Trauma. I feel trauma is a heavy word, so I'm using drama. But
okay.
Either way, it could be trauma or drama. I don't want to use trauma because Alec's story seems like trauma. Mine seems like drama. So
nobody ever tried to chop your limbs off?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So the identity crisis for me caused me to spend so much of my brain just thinking of how can I be like that white person over there, or that white kid over there, that white kid that has the skateboard and I don't have a skateboard, that white kid that has a guitar that I want that guitar, or that white kid that has the parents that hug him every day. For whatever reason, my upbringing was a little bit more harsh, maybe of a harsh Asian upbringing. So I felt like I struggled. Now looking back, I guess I struggled with that, and it stunted my education, in my opinion. Granted, I'm lucky, I'm fortunate. I think I've turned out all right, but I spent a lot of years dealing with that identity problem and that wanting to fit with the Joneses, not quite the Joneses. I just wanted to fit in.
Anybody white.
Yeah, I just wanted to fit into the community that I was living around. And I think that literally, if I had a throw a quantitative number out there, like until the age of 24 was where my mental growth, wisdom, knowledge started happening, because I spent everything before was just trying to fit in.
Until preoccupied with this issue.
Yeah. And it wasn't until 24 where I started watching documentaries, podcasts, and listening to people, trying to listen, or trying to learn more from listening instead of being so angry at the world. So now when I say that story to somebody that I'm telling them, hey, stop looking down at people so harshly because you don't understand their issues. So then I think your story is even one of those, like, when I hear your story, I'm like thinking, holy crap, like when I complain about my life, like you had it so much more worse than I did. So that
I think really the thing that links it all together is we're lost for metrics of our own personal success. So like valuing yourself comparing to other people is super hard. So a lot of my problems actually came from not knowing how to define myself successful, because like I didn't understand how to interact with masculine groups without trying to be the most macho, or interact with females without trying to override them in these stereotypical ways. The only metrics for masculine success I had were very commercial, and it ended up with me being very reckless, very showy, very just kind of self-destructive, because I didn't know how to value my own success. So like individualization, or self-actualization in simple terms is just building your life to what makes you happy, right? And how do you find that if you're just like thrown into this pool and you have to look at other places to define what makes you a valuable person? And so a lot of these trauma responses are linked to that, because it ends up with you having low self-esteem and turning to something else to try to find your own value.
I'm imagining you like riding around high school on a big motorcycle with a crowbar and just jumping off and putting other dudes in headlocks to establish dominance. Just
dude, kind of like I would show up to school in a robe, nothing but a robe. Like I got my nipples pierced one day, and there was still like blood. I was just drunk all the time. Like I got smashed between two cars one time. I joined a gang. Yeah, like all this crazy stuff. But yeah, I was like trying to be the biggest, most macho, most cool guy.
Sounds like you were kind of.
I think that was, I was probably one of the loudest kids, and I still kind of am. Like in a conversation, when we're hanging out in a group, you could hear my voice over a group sometimes. Yeah. I think that might stem, if I had to psychoanalyze myself, maybe as a kid, what you're saying about trying to be a bully and make up for the harsh times, that was your way of coping with it. My way of coping with being the only Asian kid in that white town was to be super loud. Just to, if anyone wanted to put me down for being different, my only way was just to be louder than you and drown you out, and or pick a fight with you. I didn't really pick that many fights. There was a few here and there, but it was mostly about just being loud, because I think it felt like the louder I was, people were either afraid of me or not like.
That is one power that you can have.
Yeah. And I don't think me being loud today isn't because I'm trying to compensate for something. I think it just happens to carry over from that stage of my life, I think.
Yeah. So are your nipples still pierced?
No, when I turned 26, there's no respectable 26-year-old with. But by that time, I only had one, because another one got torn out playing rugby.
Oh,
I made a big boy decision. I took it out.
The other day, Em and I was talking about getting to a good place in your life where you could either help others. Actually, I actually want to jump a different topic. When you said self-actualization, sorry, I just want to add this. I do think about self-actualization. I want to add in
pronunciation.
Yeah. My English sucks.
You took the time to do it right, though. That was good.
I want to add in not only, I think you said, what makes you happy? But actually the thing that I want to add in there that I think is important, that I maybe spend a little bit too much time on, is also one's reflection on their impact on their surroundings. Because if you are a mean person and you don't care, then you just end up being a jerk all the time. That's fine. But if you do something mean and you try to rectify it and then go back to the person and say, hey, I'm sorry I did this. Can I make it better? Can I improve your life? Is there something I could do in the future to make that better? I think I feel that's a part of self-actualization. So that's something I spend a lot of time trying to make the surroundings around me better, because I think about all the wrong things I've done in the past. So,
Alec is out there trying to make better meat for me.
Yeah, he's doing a better job than what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, but I totally agree. I think that one of the fundamental units measuring your humanity is empathy. And empathy stems from understanding your own experience and also being able to understand the experience of others. Because if you can understand the experience of others to a really fundamental level, you can essentially live multiple lives because you're experiencing somebody else's experience. And so that kind of elevates your humanity. And so if you're able to understand your impact on other people, that is essentially being more empathetic because you can understand somebody else's perspective and how your actions are impacting it.
Yeah, empathetic and or sympathetic too, because sometimes we may not have, like if I try to think about your childhood, like if I try to say something to comfort you, I wouldn't, there's no way for me to know that type of childhood. So I could try to say something nice because I'm trying to put myself, what would I felt if I had that childhood. So I'm just saying sympathetic and empathetic. Yeah.
I'm very happy you didn't get macheted.
Well, me too. No, never mind. But yeah, I don't even know.
I stabbed a guy once.
Yeah, super glad I have all my limbs.
So, I mean, obviously you're a highly educated dude. You're out of university pursuing your PhD. Is that correct? And you're well-versed in cell biology and a lot of other topics we can tell we've glanced on. How did you transition from, this weird gang caricature of a kid showing up to school in a bathrobe with bloody pierced nipples? How did you transition to what, obviously you must put in the time and the effort to study and learn. How did you turn into a great student or turn into a scholar? What was that? Because we're missing that piece. We see kind of who you are now. We have this description of a very difficult childhood leading you to some not healthy place. So what was the turning point, or was there a growth or an evolution, or how did you become the guy that we see in front of us here?
I definitely was pretty rambunctious as a teenager, but I went to college. And even getting there was more accident than anything. I only went to the college I went to because I thought it would be a good place to party. I didn't visit it. I didn't look into anything, and it was crazy.
Was it Santa Barbara?
No, I wish it was Auburn, Alabama.
I was thinking about Giselle, that podcast with Giselle. We did a podcast a few ago where we had a alumni from Santa Barbara. She's saying all the people were hot there. Just
partying their asses off.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, continue.
So you went to Alabama to party?
Yeah, so I ended up in Auburn, Alabama. I never visited. The only thing I knew about them was that they just won the national championship. And I was like, party city. So I went there. It was nothing like what I thought.
Yeah.
But, I think a lot of it was kind of that independence, that being alone. But I hit a very, very big mental skid. So I started to finally see some of the effects of the trauma of my childhood, and I hit a really, really low point. And I'm a knowledge seeker, like how I was getting to in the beginning. So I really sought to understand what was going on. So I hit such a low point that I was like fogged in, and I was getting lost in my own house. Like I was like just absolutely entrenched in this kind of darkness. And so eventually I sought out therapy, and I started meditating. I've been a daily meditator for almost 6 years now. I started just really, really getting into a lot of the core fundamental human experiential things. And I've always been kind of a melancholy person, very, very death-centric, very, interested in the facets of human experience. And so I think that kind of just finally started to blossom into a place where it could be productive instead of just like a stupid cloud that I was walking around with. So I really, really started honing in on understanding myself. And then once I started to kind of get there, I started understanding the people, and all that culminated in the book that I just wrote, actually, because the book is like just everything that I wish somebody would have told me, because I just didn't have the words. So I couldn't even start to think about it. So when I wrote this thing, it's just like me trying to go back and take care of past me and saying like, I'm sorry you didn't know this, but here are the things I would have told myself.
Wow.
And so that's kind of where I am now.
Is this a published book? Is it something people can buy?
It's on Amazon now. I mean, it's not long. It's very introductory, but it's everything that I wanted to say. Everything that when my niece grows up, I hope she reads, and everything that I think maybe touch on a lot of people's experience. So I hope. So I mean, it's on Amazon if you search my name.
What's the book called?
It's called Seeing Inside. I'm not great at titles.
No, that's good.
That's good. We'll put the link on. You gave me the link. I'll put it in the description in the video, and then at the end, I'll even add a caption on this video at the end for your.
That's
book.
way better than Albuquerque to Alabama.
Yeah.
Albuquerque to Auburn.
Walk me through the darkest part right before heading. So I'm guessing the darkest part of your life was before that that move to Alabama for college, I'm guessing?
No, I was flying high then, man. I was like,
Party City.
Senior year was crazy cool.
Oh.
But when I got to Auburn, I was completely lost for resources. Like, I didn't know that you had to pick a major. I didn't know anything about anything. I had never really studied very hard. Like, I was completely lost, and nobody in my family knew anything about college.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that you could go talk to a counselor for resources. I'd never done that. So I was just completely flabbergasted, just floating in this fucking pool of just like lostness.
Yeah.
And so I was partying a lot, and I was doing a lot of crazy things. Like, I was the overnight manager at a library.
Oh.
So I was like, you know, I was selling drugs a lot, like just crazy things.
The fucking library guy selling the drugs. I knew it.
It's the perfect place because everybody on campus needs to go there eventually, and I'm overnight, so I was there from midnight till 7 a.m.
That's when I need drugs, is after midnight.
Exactly. It was crazy times. But yeah, I hit this point where a girl that I was very interested in, there's always a freaking girl, we broke up. And that was when I really, really, really felt the isolation and the lostness, because I've been using her as a crutch. And these old mental struggles that first started appearing when I was in high school, like a sort of delayed mental disorder, kind of resurfaced. And so I got so freaked out by it that's when I started seeing the therapist. I was like, I can't keep living like this. And so she helped me piece together what was going on, because to me it was just like a crazy surreal experience, and I was like, I'm going fucking bonkers. And so she helped me kind of understand and see through, and we used a lot of like cognitive behavioral therapy to kind of distance the me from the workings of the mind. And we got there eventually. I went there for like probably a year and a half before I graduated.
Jumping a bit back to your childhood, and if there's anything in your book that you already explained, if you happen to explain the question about any of the questions I'm about to have, just say it's in your book for the audience to go
Read
buy
the
it.
book, jerk off.
Yeah. But is there any advice you would have from your childhood if a young viewer happened to be watching this and went through the same experience that you went through as a child, whether through abuse, poverty, starvation, anything? What advice would you give a young child if they happen to listen to this?
Ooh, that's really hard, because you can give a child advice that's like higher level, but something that they could walk with and that would actually help them day to day, that's fucking hard, because all a kid wants is to be loved and accepted. And if you're not getting that from your main source, like you just don't have it. And so, oh man, if I was to like talk to anybody, like if in a very specific situation, if I was walking up to a child and that child was being abused and I couldn't do anything except give this child like 3 sentences, I would tell that child that despite your shitty situation, like, I love you and I love everything about you, and you're going to grow up to continue to be loved by everybody you meet, and you're in a really, really shitty situation right now, but that's not the world, and it's not a representation of what's in your future, and you are completely worth it.
That's beautiful. There's been times where I've come across situations like that, and I try to think about, I only got a few seconds with this person. They're going through a very harsh time, and I see it's not their fault. I only got a few seconds to say something, and I think I mean, in that situation, I think you chose the best sentences there is for that situation. Oh, sorry about this.
It's got pretty heavy.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what I like this type of podcast for these things. Because we get to see the lives. We get to see right now, most people, if they were to encounter you, they only know about your PhD, and that's what they would know. They don't know about these stories. And I think that to me, that's what this podcast is for, to see what builds someone to get there, and also for us to learn about everything to get there too, if we want to be like that person. That's the way I look at it.
Are you saying I could have been a much better person if I had more trauma in my childhood?
No, I think each person's all their own. I mean, everybody's got their own quirks. Like I might be too emotional. You might be not emotional enough. It's just there's just these dynamics of people. We all.
All I know is that the more you beat a kid, the funnier they get.
Different kind of stress.
I love the heavy stuff. I've always been a pretty melancholy person, but I really like sitting in that space because the melancholiness is a very comforting center point where it's a mode of acceptance. And I think acceptance relies into a lot of different things, but it's just like it's like sitting inside when it's raining outside and everything's just comfy and cozy and tight. Like that is my gray state of existence where I find my little nugget of centric,
Nice. I think yours sounds like a pretty good success story of therapy. Like I hear about a lot of people that go to therapy for years and years and they don't seem much different. They don't seem like a different person. There doesn't seem like much change. They just seem to keep going to this therapy to struggle with something or deal with something or talk about something. But in your case, it sounds like there was a great transformation largely due to this therapy that you underwent.
Or would you attribute some of it to something that you do or that is your personality that helped get here? Does that make sense? Meaning?
Yeah. So I actually went to therapy with that girl that ended up breaking up with me, like a couples therapy. And we didn't get anywhere because I fucking refused to acknowledge that I was doing anything wrong. There was too much shame holding on. There was too much ego. And it wouldn't let us make any progress. Yeah. But when I went to the other therapist, my personal therapist, like I was in such a shitty spot that I was just like, and I always knew in the back of my head that I was a dick or that I was chasing the wrong thing as I was valuing myself using these really destructive methods. So I went in there and just no shame, like just laid it out, all the terrible thoughts, all the, things that anybody could use to break me down at any instant and just kind of let it out. And that's the same way that I try to be now. It's just like, there's no shame, things just are how they are. And like, even with this podcast, like talking about some of these things, people may hide them because they're ashamed of them or it can be used to devalue you in some way. Yeah. Like it just is.
No, you seem like a great dude.
Well, thank you. You seem like a great dude. And I have to admit that.
I love you, man.
Yeah, I think in our society, there's like a macho thing where we can't talk about it. For a lot of men, I think we can't talk about those things that emotionally affect us. And I think that's very unfortunate, especially in this world where I think we have an abundance of privilege, I guess. And I'm not saying
macho things.
I'm not saying privilege and I think what culturally in the news right now, white privilege and stuff like that. No, I'm saying privilege as we have so much privilege. Just I got so much food in the fridge. I'm overweight. I eat too much. I get to hang out and play video games so often. That's such a huge privilege. And I almost forget. I forget where we're going. Sorry. So
no, you're fine. Like we can afford to look at some of these first world actualization problems.
Yes.
If it makes you feel any better, all throughout my high school and college experience, none of the counselors that I went to were worth very much as far as guidance and information.
Yeah, I think I only remember my college guidance counselor. It seemed like he was trying to just get me to sign. It almost felt like the person to get you to sign up for classes, they just get you to pay more, basically.
You're trying to upsell you?
That's what it felt like. Like, this is not a guidance counselor. This is a salesman.
It's like a weird pyramid scheme.
Yeah, exactly.
Sell these knives, you're going to be super happy.
Yeah.
I knew a chick that sold knives in college.
Really?
You sell knives?
We had a cousin that did, Todd.
He was selling knives?
Yeah.
Okay.
His ordeal selling, as long as he just got people to sign that they watched or heard his presentation, he would get a amount of money for it. He would just try to get anybody willing to sign their name and say, "Yeah, I watched the presentation." But it felt like a weird, almost a pyramid scheme type of thing.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, getting back to your high school stuff, I think that it's this weird thing where adolescents need the most help, but they're also just not at a level where they can comprehend the tools that will get them that help. Like, how do you go up to a high schooler and tell them, like, no, all the things that you think make you cool are just going to make you sad later? Like, actually try to build yourself and you'll have way more fruitful rewards. But, like, vast majority of high schoolers just don't have the mental capacities to really comprehend that stuff. They haven't even got to the point where they can fully understand a lot of people's perspectives. And one of the nice things I see about the Zoomers now, the youngest kids now are super emotionally aware. And I think that that's a consequence of a lot more exposure, because if you have a lot more exposure, you have a lot more people's people's perspectives, people's experiences, people's just daily lives, and you can sort of, you know, see the differences between them. So a lot of the rural populations, they tend to be very enclosed, and that's why you have these sort of unified states of belief. So if they're not getting that kind of exposure to other experiences or to other perspectives, you know, you just believe everything around you.
Yeah.
So now you have things like TikTok, which are showing everybody's perspective, everybody's dirty laundry. People are just throwing their mental traumas out there. And suddenly you have this whole new encapsulation of what the world can be. And like, whoa, there's way more things than what's just going on inside me. So like the emotional state of the Zoomers now is way higher to what I saw when I was younger, to what I imagine it was like for people older than me.
Yeah, my personal opinion on that, I think there's good and bad. I think Emmett would say, I've heard Emmett quite a few times.
Calling me out.
Yeah, he says there's a little bit, if I had to paraphrase it, there's a little bit too much emotional, what's the word I'm looking for?
The way I would put it is
snowflake syndrome for sure. But you figure a pendulum has to swing both sides before it falls in the middle.
Well said.
Like we're in the time when we're a little maybe too sensitive, where everybody's being a little too individualized, but we got to get there so we know where the middle is.
Yes, well said. That was actually kind of what I was going to say. I think we have to go too far so that we know what too far is. Because if a kid is dealing with some type of identity crisis with they don't know if they're male or female, like right now I hear of some studies where the age 14 through 30, there's like 40% more sex changes, like medical sex changes, than age 30 through 70. So if laws and culture is accepting sex changes, why is there such a huge amount between the age of 14 and 30? Shouldn't it be a little bit more equal? So the extrapolation thoughts on that, people are saying, well, maybe the over 30 years old, they're okay. They've lived their life and they're just okay. They know society doesn't quite accept them the way they want to be accepted, but they've lived with it and they're like, okay, they identify a certain way and that's the way that they are. They're not going to change and go do a medical change because that doesn't help them mentally. So there's a little bit of a balance of what's good mentally for the in the short term and the long term. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some really interesting fallout psychologically from this gender impacting right now, because it's a mixing of biological and psychological. And so like we're in the very, very beginning stages of it. And I think that I don't know enough to know about, the changes that happen when somebody undergoes sex changes or what mind state caused you to want to be into another body. But I do think that, some of the patterns we're seeing now may kind of level off or change over time, and that, societal things are temporal, definitely.
So we got 45 minutes left, but there's a lot of questions, a lot. So
a lot we haven't covered.
Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blast these questions at you, and feel free to just say that was already answered or you don't have an add-on to that question if it was already.
Are these from Reddit or what's the?
Some from Reddit, some from me, some from you, and then some from Alec too.
All right, the interrogation continues, my friend.
Okay, how can America get involved with STEM?
With STEM?
Yeah,
science communication. For sure. The thing you have to do, so one of the huge problems right now is that we don't see our scientists as accomplished individuals enough to make them heroes. So like you talk about the woman who did CRISPR, like all you have to know is that she learned how to alter your DNA. And that's like, whoa, that's an impressive person.
Yeah.
But like not every scientist is doing these things. And if you can really, really understand and comprehend what they're doing, then you're like, whoa, that's fucking cool. And that happens for every scientific endeavor. If you look deep enough into anything, it gets interesting. But right now, scientists are stupid when it comes to communicating these things. And so people aren't interested. It's so much easier to see why you should make a hero out of LeBron James because he just like, you look at him, he's amazing, and everything he does is amazing, and he's like also a really good person.
Yeah.
He's kind of crazy sometimes, but I mean, he just put a bunch of kids through school, so great person. But yeah, like communicating the things that are interesting about science in ways that people can connect to them and understand them and want to talk about them with their peers, like that is how you get people more involved in STEM, more accepting of science in general and research in general, and you expand the potential that we have to combat some of the problems we're facing.
How would you systematically do that? If I gave you a magic wand, but it wasn't a magic wand that did anything in general, it had to be pretty specific, like build a system. How would you do that? What would you do to
a system building wand?
Yeah. So you said something about making it more entertaining for kids to learn, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there used to be this really cool thing that was passed around Facebook. There's a page called IFL Science. Do you guys know what that is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that would take these things to make them super fucking interesting, so you can just pass them on to your friends and post them on your story. And things like that, that is the change that needs to be made. You need to take things and boil them down to be interesting so that people can talk about them. But also, the gamification of protein folding is something that is awesome. If you can explain to people what they're doing and explain just like a little video explaining why protein folding is important and how this is going to help scientists, but now it's a game and you can gain experience points from it, like that is so immediately impactful and fun and interesting. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, a little bit of a tangent on that. The protein folding thing, a few years ago, there was kind of, you could download a program and it just uses your CPU or GPU at nighttime. And then, so when you go to sleep, your computer's helping, I forget if it was MIT or Harvard or what, it was actually using your CPU and GPU to do protein folding, and you just go to sleep. So it's just basically using your electricity and your hardware. That was something I did for a little while, but unfortunately, I guess to say that I'm selfish is that I just got bored of being participating in it, because you don't do anything. You just leave your computer on and let that program run. Whereas like the Borderlands 3 video game, you actually get to click and change the puzzle, and then you get a feeling of success, and you're building your character in the game. So.
Yeah, so if like maybe they could give you an NFT of the protein that you helped build, but it has like a flip card where you're like, okay, that protein does this in the body. You just help this man be cured of this disease, and you can collect that you help that problem be solved in an NFT or something. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Next question: why did you stop podcasting, or did you stop?
I stopped podcasting because I love conversation just in general, but I like to do it in person. So when the pandemic hit, like I kind of dropped off, because I was like, well, body language is a big part of it for me.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see myself getting involved in it when I wasn't doing that. And also like my time got super, super stringent. But now like this has been super great. Like it's different. It's definitely different. There's a certain level of like inherent connection that's lost in the virtual, but still, I mean, it's pretty good conversation.
Yeah,
maybe I'll take it again.
I think Emmett, he said a couple times on some of the Zoom calls where he likes to make quite a bit more jokes than I do, and so his jokes will be lost in the transmission, because either the audio might cut out and then the person on the other end may not hear it, or that person's talking, they by the split second or how many seconds before it travels there, that other person doesn't know that Emmett just said something. So
this timing delay is screwing up my cleverness.
Yeah, that and your chill ass voice is just like cruising under the current of everybody else talking.
I'm not trying to bull anybody with my voice.
Yeah, if you ever make it to Vegas, come do a in-person podcast with us.
That'd be very cool.
Next question. In layman's terms, what are the benefits of studying protein misfolding responses in cells? I think we might have covered this, but
yeah, we might have covered that. So basically, it's dealing with a lot of protein misfolding diseases like Alzheimer's is the big one, but also like elongating the lives of cells and just helping cells be more efficient so that we don't see a lot of health problems.
So could we live longer effectively if you solve some protein misfolding issues?
If you solved some like with the ROS stuff, if you solve some of the problems that made proteins misfold, then you could probably live longer. But by directly dealing with protein misfolding, maybe not. Probably
Okay.
not. It's not that cool.
Gotcha.
When did you find the time to write a book while also co-founding a startup?
Dude, I'm always working. Like I am hyper productive to the point that it's kind of detrimental. But I just like sat down one day and just like typed until I couldn't type anymore, and then just sporadically, whenever I got some free time, just kept typing. But honestly, a big portion of it was that all of these things had already been building up for so long that it didn't take long to put them into words. So the fact that I kind of already had the story written, didn't have to find it along the way, was a big portion of why it didn't take so long to do.
You were compelled.
Exactly. The power within me, and I just threw it up on my laptop.
What is the most valuable trait an entrepreneur should have?
Resourcefulness, for sure. Because there are so many weird ways that we've had to take to make things happen. Like I've had to write the most innocuous people emails to try to eventually get some stuff done. And like, you have to go out looking for something. If you want to make something from scratch, so there's not going to be a guidebook for it. There's not going to be a formula you follow. And there's not going to be a single metric of success. So what you have to do is like get really creative and out of the box with where you're going to try to pull your resources from. And a lot of times that's just like Googling or writing to one person and asking if they can connect you to somebody else. And having no shame in the fact that you're starting out is crucial too. Don't let anybody like bully you just because you're new, because of course you have to learn the game. Like everybody gets better at things because they spend time in them. But if you are just starting out, like obviously there's no time on your belt. So be resourceful is like the biggest thing that, and when I was the executive director of that nonprofit, I saw a lot of people that were either the doers or the don't doers. And the difference between them is just that the doers do whatever they can. And that's the big difference.
Yeah, that's an important point. I think that you spoke that very well. Like when I was 18, I didn't know how to be resourceful at all. It was just like, I show up for school and I don't know. I mean, I don't even know how you do that. Like whatever you're trying to do, like, I don't know. I'm just here. Like I don't know how to talk to people. I don't know how to go chase after things. I don't know how to try really hard to, achieve some goal. And it took me a long time into my adulthood to see that around enough and see that in other people. Go, oh, that's how if you really want to do that, then you got to try real hard every day and find new ways to do it. You got to talk to anybody you can, try anything you can. You got to want it bad enough to put some effort into it. And I was missing that out of the gate, I think. So that's an important point for entrepreneurship. It wasn't even an idea for me when I was 18. When I was 18, it was like, well, I guess I go to college and get a degree and then get a good job. And then that's it. I mean, I didn't know any entrepreneurs. I didn't have any concept of that.
Yeah, a lot of people find themselves in the same industries as the people around them just because they can ask for help in what to do next. It's really hard to start your own thing if nobody around you has done it before.
Why? Next question. Why did you elect to have a vasectomy?
So that actually ties
Whoa, out of left field. Oh, shit.
Rapid firing, even weird or tough questions.
So I've always known that I didn't want to have kids.
You're 26 now, is that correct?
28.
28, okay. Gotcha.
So I think, I'm very connective in the sense that like the people, I have a relatively small circle, but the people that are in it are very fundamentally open and connected with me, I like to think. And so when I think about having a child, like that is supposed to be the most fundamental connection that you can have. And I'm sure that there are very, very strong biological urges that it probably will happen for everybody. But the fact of the matter is, like, I've had this dog for 10 years and I love this dog. I do everything for this dog. Like I put this screen thing so he can go outside onto the balcony in the apartment, and I built him a potty. Like I bought tools so I can build him a potty.
Yeah.
But it comes down to, I know that I'm going to be a good father because I absolutely would not let myself be a bad father.
Yeah.
But the crux of that also means that my child will never experience any of the traumas that I have. And so I find that I tend to bond really well with people who have gone through some trauma. And so I think that inherently I will always have this weird barrier between me and my child where I couldn't relate. We wouldn't have the same mental construct set up because I wouldn't let my child suffer. And so I think that eventually I'm going to adopt, because I think that two people who are victims of circumstance tend to find each other more through struggle, and that would create a much stronger bond if I were to adopt a child of struggle than if I were to have my own.
That was the best reason I've ever heard to have a vasectomy.
Fantastic. Now, for Emmett, who
for What's Emmett,
that? No, sorry, I was thinking of sperm donation. That was good.
Oh, yeah.
Don't do that anymore, but I did do that.
Emmett is strongly against having children. Now, if I were to just for some reason,
well, not everybody.
No, for himself. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. I worded that poorly. So
everybody, stop having children now.
If I were to ask, go ahead.
Sorry. Also, a big reason of it is just that, like, so when I was growing up, like, I really took care of my sister, and it like all this responsibility fell onto me. And so it grew to this point now where I don't like having other people be responsible, or me being responsible for other people, because I kind of grew resentment for it. And that's actually a big reason I've been single for the past 6 years, and something that I really need to work to getting over. But that's also something that kept me from having kids, is it detracts from the freedom that I have as a person. And like, you fundamentally start living your entire life based upon somebody else's metrics of achievement. So I'm also kind of selfish in it too. Like, that first response sounded great and that was really good, but also I'm kind of selfish.
Gotta grow all this meat, bro.
Exactly.
I want you to try to pitch to Emmett to get a vasectomy. I know that's a weird question, but Emmett's like, for his own life, he doesn't want to have children. And yet, it actually, now that the way that you explained that first part of why you didn't get a vasectomy, it makes me think that you've went through the experience of doing the physical, getting cut and whatnot. Maybe you could pitch.
You want Alec to convince me to get a vasectomy right now?
Yeah, for fun. I don't know why.
Dude, I was taking Snapchats during my procedure. like it's the weirdest feeling ever, but it's not. It's 20 minutes. You get it done, and then it's like 2 days of a little bit of pain. But I mean, I do jujitsu now, and so there's no long-term effects that are like, it's the long chronic sensitivity. I mean, I don't know if you want TMI about my wiener game, but I mean, like,
yes,
no loss of libido. Like, I'm still grounded and pound. Everything's still works.
This is turning into a TikTok clip.
Yeah, there's no loss of load. Like, everything is both the same, except you don't have to worry about having children.
I've never given it that much thought.
How much, like, when you talk about not wanting to have kids for your personal life, I'm actually thinking, after hearing a little bit of Alec talk about it, I'm like, dang, Emmett should have gotten a vasectomy.
Well, I 100% don't want to have kids.
They're cheap too. I got mine for $250.
Yeah, well, so I never knew what the cost was. It never occurred to me. I didn't go look into, how much does it cost. I think what I've heard that there is some small risk of affecting your erection. I don't know if that's true or not.
No, he just answered that, so there's not.
No, he's saying he hasn't had it.
There's always a risk. There's always going to be a risk. But for the vast majority of men, so like, I've been on the subreddit talking to a bunch of other dudes, and like, some people may have risk of like, drastic example here. If you have very small testicular sac, like, that means that the clips that are in there, if they decide to do it by clips, not pulling you out, and you and your tiny testicles.
I have very compact, efficient testicles.
Yeah, they're so aerodynamic. There's not a single wrinkle to be found. But they'll actually, make contact a little bit on the inside, so you can, like, I can feel my clips. So, I mean, there's always going to be risk to everything, but there's also risk to, like, using a different kind of water flosser because your gums are sensitive or whatever. So, I mean, and there's ways to reverse it. So, like, if I still wanted to have a kid, it's like, granted, I do have children out in the world because I was a sperm donor, but if I wanted to later in life, they could take a needle, stick it in the back of my testicle, suck the sperm out, and then inject it into the woman of my choice. So it's not even like a finite wall.
Well, so if that risk of the risk of losing your erectile ability, if it's 1 out of 1,000 or something, I guess the other thing is that I don't have this problem of, like, accidentally making babies everywhere. Like, I'm pretty good at not making babies responsibly.
I would say, but from a male perspective, you could have sex with your girlfriend without a condom and not have to worry. That would be a huge benefit, depending on if the girlfriend is against birth control. So that's just a...
Yeah, that doesn't fit me. So then there's no need. Well, yeah. If there was, if my life was such that there was a need to cut off the possibility of lots of children happening or any children happening, as my life is right now, I don't have any accidental children. So I've made
the vast majority of erectile dysfunction is also mental.
Yeah.
So a lot of people come up with mental constructs, and that's why they can't, maintain an erection. And the way that you can measure that is if you still get morning wood, then it's all in your head.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of people who report that they can't get boners may also fall into that same category. So even with the small numbers that are presented with how many people eventually suffer some kind of structural damage, it's probably even smaller than that, because there's dudes who are just like way too inside their head to get into it anymore.
Yeah.
Feel demasculinated or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We got about 10 questions, and then I think there's going to be one question that it's cryptocurrency, that not this one, but we eventually get to the cryptocurrency talk, and I want to save time for that because I have a feeling you want to talk about that.
I love crypto.
Crypto boner.
Both of us want to talk about it. So, okay.
Crypto erection.
So maybe if you could keep these answers maybe to 1 or 3 sentences, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
How has meditation affected your life?
It has centered me and given me my personal value system for what I actually care about.
Would you suggest it for everyone?
I would suggest some sort of getting out of your head for everyone, whatever that means. Just like realizing that you're not the protagonist of the world and that everything that's happening in your life is just a story that you tell yourself. It puts things in perspective. So whatever, brings that.
If I get super drunk once in a while, it'll knock me out of my thoughts.
Basically the same exact thing. Yeah. Blacking out, meditation, they're the same.
Awesome. Next question. What is your favorite trait in others?
Empathy, for sure. The ability to, connect with somebody else's existence. And I think we touched on that a little bit, but 100% empathy.
Next question. Are there any common themes you see when coaching others? And so to add to that is, in your email to me prior to the show, you said you do life coaching, but at a by inquiry only, if that's correct? So
yeah, it started because in college I had a guy that I worked with, because I used to be a bartender. He would kind of ask me a lot, why, my life was different from his, and why maybe I had some things that he wanted. And so we worked together on a one-on-one, and then I helped his friend, and then it kind of grew from there. But the one big thing that I see is just that people don't understand what they want and how to quantify their own perspective on what gives you a good life at the end of the day. What things help you sleep at night? A lot of people really misidentify that. And I think finding that is a big solution to having the life you want.
I think it's funny because it is common to connect with your bartender and to do some therapy, and then you drink and you let down your guard and you have real meaningful talks with your bartender. I think it's another thing to then hire your bartender as a life coach. That seems funny to say who's your life coach.
Time that I spent on Reddit actually helping some people under a Reddit username. So I spent a lot of time doing that.
Nice.
For the life coaching thing, if it's by inquiry only, do you want people to reach out to you, or are you pretty limited in time? So you're
got no time.
Is that why it's by inquiry only?
I mean, it's just I'm not actively trying to do that, but if somebody finds that they need help and maybe they find that I might be able to help them, totally reach out. I'm never going to turn anybody away.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Gotcha. All right, we're going to officially do the final questions part, which I have about 5 or 6 questions that I ask everyone. First question, what great daily habits do you have? And I'm guessing that might be meditation, but go ahead and answer however you wish.
Yeah, I meditate. I ride my bike to work. I eat salads every day. I do all the classical stuff. I try to wash my face before I go to jiu-jitsu and stuff. And
you healthy motherfucker.
Normal stuff that everybody tells you to do.
What's the biggest problem for humans? What should they do to fix it?
I think the biggest problem for humans right now where we stand is just being able to admit that maybe you don't know everything and kind of come to terms with the fact that somebody else may be able to educate you on something. Because a lot of the times you get a lot of dividing lines because people get so entrenched in their opinion that they base their entire ego on it. So if they're wrong on this one thing, then they're fundamentally wrong as a human.
Yeah, there's a lot of wrong people out there.
What is your favorite food?
My favorite food?
That goddamn salad.
Donuts, easy. Like,
Donuts.
Interesting. We've been answered donuts like the last 2 out of 3. Was it?
Really?
I think someone else or
I'm 0% shocked. It's the perfect food.
You ever had a mochi donut?
No, what's that?
It's kind of a new fad out here. It's like a regular donut, and it's got some kind of mochi chewy center to it. So it's a.
Oh no, I haven't had that. It sounds good though.
If you end up out in Vegas, we'll load you up on mochi donuts.
Dude, that sounds great.
I guess I say that in shock because I guess maybe I don't enjoy donuts as much as most people do. I mean, I like a donut, but I don't go out of my way, and I wouldn't classify it as my most favorite food or even in the top 10, oddly. So I find it interesting that I think the last 4 or 5 podcasts, there's 2 people that said donuts.
I think it's my comfort food.
Yeah.
Like when I'm having a bad day, like I just cry tears into my donut hole.
That's awesome. Next question. Think of at least 2 friends that should do this conversation. Call them out.
Ooh, Rich, get on here. He's a cop who's also a commercial pilot.
Oh.
Super interesting. And Medina, get on here because like she's probably the smartest person I know, and she's had some crazy experiences herself.
Awesome.
Wow. Is she a scientist in your field, or?
She's a computer scientist, but biological computer scientist.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so I guess the last question that we got a lot of time to talk about is, what do you know or think of cryptocurrency?
Have you heard of this cryptocurrency thing?
I'm pretty sure that's the one where they inject the microchips in you. And so I'm pretty heavily invested into some established projects and some newer projects. Right now, I've kind of jumped on this meme wagon of this new decentralized exchange that's backed by the people who own the Wall Street Bets domain. So it's not connected to the actual subreddit that had the whole GME thing, but the same kind of people. And if you guys were involved in the community at all, it's like very community driven, very decentralized. So I jumped on that project. But overall, I think that it has some really, really exciting things that can be used. So a lot of data storage possibilities and a lot of things that you normally wouldn't think of. And one of the cool things I heard when people were describing it, when they came out with cell phones, everybody was like, cool, you can make calls and you can like play Snake. But I mean, that's as far as the technology goes. But now we do everything from our cell phones. And so we're kind of reaching this point with blockchain where, yeah, cryptocurrency is like one facet of it. But the things that we're going to be able to do with it are just, we haven't even fathomed them yet. So cryptocurrency is really awesome because we're fleshing out some of the things we can do with blockchain.
When you say that blockchain is going to be this innovative tool that we can't fathom that's to come from it, what makes you think of that?
Yeah, I have friends that I played a bunch of sports, but I never watch them. But my friends are like super into sports. And there's one token called Chili's. And what that does is inherently gives you voting power in your favorite team. So the teams, I think the 76ers, the basketball team, recently signed a deal with Socios.com, who owns Chili's, where they are giving a certain amount of delegating rights to token owners. So you can actually have impact on the things that you care about through tokenomics.
You mean like, so if I was a 76ers fan, I could say, hey, I want Jerry Jones to, no, not that name. I want Joe Johnson to get more time on the court, or like can you vote what's happening on the court? Is that what that is? Or you want players to?
The way that I think it works, not a big sports professional guy, but the way I think it works is that people put forth, like anybody can put forth a thing to be voted on. And then if it becomes popular within the community, enough people get behind it, then it's implemented into the actual team.
That's a cool layer of engagement for if you're totally into sports.
When did do you remember the moment where you went from not a crypto believer to a crypto believer? Was there a moment for that?
Yeah, so I played CryptoKitties back in 2017. I have a MetaMask wallet, but I don't have my seed phrase, and I don't know if there's any Ethereum in there, but there might be.
Yeah.
So I've been just like hunting through every old Google file and every old hard drive trying to find it. But back then, like, we did it because it was funny to have CryptoKitties. But then a buddy that I used to live with, he won a McGregor Mayweather bet. So he put some bets on Mayweather online, and he could be paid in Bitcoin. And so he was like, yeah, whatever. Like, he got paid in Bitcoin, and we didn't know what to do with it really. So that's when we started to like explore all the things that you can do. Because we were trying to like, okay, we have like $100 this thing. What the hell are we going to do with it?
Interesting.
The for the MetaMask seed phrase thing, I might be wrong on this. So whoever audience, if you're watching this, if I'm not right, then feel free to put a comment down below. The seed phrase it will be dependent on your computer and that browser that it's installed on. So if you take that seed phrase and you came over to my house and try to use that seed phrase, the way that the algorithm or the math under it works, if you put that seed phrase on my computer on my MetaMask, it's going to generate a different wallet. So that seed phrase I think has to be exactly to whatever laptop or computer that you had that MetaMask on. And if you reformatted it, it's probably gone. Just FYI.
I probably figured I was boned with that. So.
Don't spend any more years of your life chasing down this 2 Ethereum.
Yeah.
I used to think I thought it was a seed phrase that went to a wallet on the blockchain, therefore making it offlineable, but it's not offlineable because it's dependent on that computer, whatever
configuration or identity.
Yeah, that identity of that computer and that browser. What's your opinion on decentralization and how that is a paradigm shift, or have you thought? Do you grasp that, or have you been through that, or?
Yeah, so I have some. I do like liquidity pools, and I've got some stuff staked. But I think it's really, really fundamental to give people control over their own finances and allow people to work in communities. So a great analogy for this is micro loans. So you can essentially take like $200 and loan it to somebody in a third world country and allow them to, start a business or whatever, and you'll gain interest from that. And you're basically doing the same thing with cryptocurrency, where it's person to person liquidity exchange. So you can get rewards from putting up some of your money so that other people can use money for whatever they need it for. And that's a big draw of things like PancakeSwap or whatever have you. But the decentralization actually takes a lot of the checks and balances away and gives more people a lot of access. So like somebody who's just starting out in their credit journey may have a solid plan in mind for getting to their eventual financial goals, but a bank is going to tell you that you don't fit A, B, and C metrics, so that you can't have it. And you essentially lose any sort of access to preliminary funding, or a small business loses access because they don't have a track record. And decentralization,
Wells Fargo right now.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard the news where they're not allowing personal loans, and then within about 30 or 60 days, all people that do have personal loans have to clear it out with Wells Fargo. So some of the news articles are saying since 2008, this is the first time a bank is doing this. So that alarms are, some people are calling alarms like, hey, this might be the start of a financial crash. By meaning Wells Fargo sees something. They know something's coming down the pike. And so they're stopping personal loans. But also if they're gonna force people within 30 to 60 days to clear out their personal loan, like certain senators, I forget if it was Kamala Harris that said, Wells Fargo, you probably need to think of something else before you truly execute this, because this could have catastrophic ramifications for our economy. Anyway, sorry. When you
you're going to push a lot of people into really bad places if you try to just yank money out of their pockets and they're not ready to hand it off.
Yeah.
I think it's not easy to get a personal loan from Wells Fargo. Like, you have to have a bunch of assets. Like, if I went down to Wells Fargo right now, I don't think they'd give me a personal loan. I think you got to have a business or have something to borrow against. My guess would be that they're seeing inflation coming, and with high inflation relative to what we're used to, what they're saying is if I loan you money and you pay it back to me in a year or two, even that short of a time frame, it's worth less than we were projecting. So it's very calculated. So on your one loan, that's not a huge deal, but times a whole Wells Fargo worth of personal loans of millions or who knows how many millions of dollars of personal loans. They're saying, we don't want to take a loss on inflation on these personal loans.
Sorry, I think I derailed us from the DeFi thingy. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So let me ask, with inflation coming and pretty inevitable, like where would you store your money right now in order to kind of hedge your losses against that?
Actually, I think I thought of something I think was really interesting the other day. So an unfortunate thing that with the 2020 market crash from COVID, if you're watching the crypto market closely, I was telling Emmett about it. It was really scary to see at certain points right after March and April. If you watch the crypto market and the stock market, if the stock market was down 1%, crypto was down 1%. It was up 2%, crypto was up 2%. And you saw this correlation. It was kind of, to me, scary. And I think that I don't like that. So if a market crash happens or something, I'm a bit scared for crypto, except for something that just hit me the other day when I was thinking about GameStop, AMC. So when you get one or two assets, we have enough people that can bring one asset up. So I think cryptocurrency is not as a whole, not all cryptocurrency, but maybe either Bitcoin or Ethereum. I really think Ethereum, where even if a market crash happens, prior to a couple of days ago, I was actually a bit scared. I was thinking, crap, if a market crash happens, is crypto going to crash also?
Yeah.
And it might be, I don't know. I'm just guessing. It may turn out to be kind of like the GameStop AMC thing, because enough people will say, hey, fuck you, America. You printed a shitload of money, fucking 30% in the last, I think 30% of all printed money has been printed in the last year. That's going to cause inflation. So I hope enough people will band together and say, no, fuck you, America, or whoever the corrupt individuals are that are playing the wealth game, that we prop up cryptocurrency. Because cryptocurrency, I personally feel that the technology underneath of it, the programming, is fucking gorgeous. Like, I usually don't use that word. I try to reserve that only for women. But that code
crypto boner.
But that code, what decentralization is, it's freaking amazing. Truth by consensus, all this thing, that's paradigms that it brings up. But that's my thoughts. What do you think about if a crash happened to the economy?
I think you need to change all your online handles and stuff to crypto boner.
Okay, I'm in.
Would a broad U.S. economic downturn affect cryptocurrency?
Was that your original question too? I'm sorry if I went on a tangent.
I mean, yeah, I totally agree with that. But now I'm just like, where do you put the money to hedge against that?
Yeah, that's a hard one. So if you think of the U.S. economy as an ocean, we're kind of all in it. So what life raft can you grab if the ocean is sinking a little bit? It's hard, right? You need a hot air balloon. So to me, yeah, I mean, you don't want cash, because cash might devalue faster than it used to. So some people say
tracking cash, and it's all kind of the same direction.
Yeah. So so I mean, really, then you just the best thing you could do is appreciating assets, and the only appreciating assets that I know that people can buy, regular working people can buy, are real estate, stocks, and cryptocurrency. I don't know of a whole lot of other normal appreciating assets that normal people can buy. So stocks is risky because stocks have been on the historic biggest bull run ever, and it is highly tied to the U.S. economic health. So if we have a broad U.S. economic problem, then that's probably going to impact the stock market negatively. Real estate might be a different story, because the U.S. real estate doesn't track the economy per se. There's other things at play. for example, if you have a sharp rise in interest rates, that will hurt the real estate valuations. Low interest rates are great for real estate valuations. So all of this being not financial advice, because we are not financial advisors, and
This is for educational purposes only.
this is all hypothetical, theoretical ramblings of my own opinion. I mean, where else would you put it besides cryptocurrency then? So, cryptocurrency is going to be wildly volatile. But as long as you're okay with that volatility, then at some point in the future, as long as it doesn't evaporate into nothing, we think since its inception, it seems to have done really well as far as becoming useful and becoming usable, becoming worthwhile. It seems like real money to me that tends to appreciate in value. The IRS wants to tax you on it. That tells me it's real money. So the great thing is in context of what you were saying earlier, the U.S. government doesn't exert any control over it currently. They can't manipulate its valuation. The U.S.
Not directly, but
Yeah, but the Fed and the Treasury aren't involved in cryptocurrency in that way right now. So
I was saying, I guess I was trying to say indirectly, like if they push regulations or tell, hey, Americans don't use cryptocurrency because it's evil, it does unfortunately bring down the value because enough people do get scared because they want to go with America or follow the rules and whatnot. But I wouldn't condone, or I think that's evil of America to do, in my opinion, because this is a transformative, amazing, innovative technology that we have never, ever had this possibility before. This code is that amazing.
The people in power in America are not interested in your transformation to transcendence and ultimate utopia.
Yeah.
So the people in power right now seem to be responsive to getting money to themselves.
Yeah. Hopefully there's enough techies out there with enough money and enough people that believe in this stuff or they understand the true power of it, that they'll be holding it and will live through the downs and then bring it up to its glory days. I hope. I know that sounds crazy, but we've never had a technology like this ever before. And it does, one thing is it does ride on the internet. We need the internet for this to kind of survive. But I don't see the world going back to the dark ages. You would have to cut off all internet throughout the world or EMP bomb the entire world to kill every computer. That just seems, I don't see that happening.
Well, and if that does happen, what the fuck are you gonna do anyway? Like,
yeah, true. Yeah,
foraging anyways. We're finding berries and living off that.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a huge paradigm shift happening, and you should always invest in a paradigm shift, because as you enter into any sort of new trajectory, you want to catch it at the bottom.
Yeah.
It's like cryptocurrency, all it needs right now is mass acceptance, and you're going to get more acceptance the more utility you have, because people will like it for this, but not for this. And there's also this huge sense of democratization. So Robinhood did a beautiful thing because it introduced a lot of people to investing stocks in general. Mm-hmm. So now we're seeing the same sort of democratization in crypto because the masses can have access to it and the masses can influence it. Mm-hmm. So my money right now is going towards projects that I believe in the cryptocurrency space, because they're going to appreciate over time. And I'm trying to catch them in the bottom so that they appreciate the maximum value.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there any other crypto related questions that you would have before we close this out?
None that I can think of. Nothing off the top of my head. And
feel free to, if you ever want to, you could email me any questions. I love talking crypto. I could talk for hours. I mean, heck, if you want to do a separate video call just on crypto, I'm totally game. I'm a little bit more maybe sci-fi-ish in my thoughts with crypto, because
your hopes and dreams.
My hopes and dreams for it, because as a software engineer, to see something this once in a lifetime opportunity and something that I don't know, it's just going to change. So it has potential to change so much. If humans take it on, I think it's more of when and not if. I think they will, because you can't kill this. The genie's out of the bottle. It's going to continue. It's just a matter of time.
it's beautiful too. I was listening to this podcast called Unchained with Laura Shin the other day, and she was talking to this founder of crypto. And like when everything in China shut down on like a week ago, like the hash rate dropped by 50% or something. But the beauty of the crypto blockchain algorithm is that it has the capacity to expand like 75% because you can affect the difficulty of the blocks being solved. So like all these beautiful little checks and balances are built right into it, and it's stable, and it's much more stable than people anticipate right now.
It's awesome. So Alec, it was an extreme pleasure having you on. I hope we do this again. Thank you so much, man.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. Oh, I forgot to drink.